Hey, what's happening, everybody? Welcome to the program. This is the Jeff Gerstmann Show. And I'm your host for this week's November installment of the show. My name is Jeff Gerstmann. It is November 5th, 2024. And here we are. Here we are. So, what are you going to do about it? Hey, hi. We're here hanging out. It's voting day in America. If you haven't voted yet, you should do it. I think you should vote. I don't know. You should do a vote. Usually you have to register to vote. Some states will allow you to register on the same day as voting. So you can just show up and be like, I just decided today that voting was a thing I should do. And you can do it. I don't know which states those are. If you're in line listening to this podcast, stay in line and listen to this podcast again and again and again. Oh, that's not bad. That's not bad. This is what is this? This is a C4. C4 got the Jolly Rancher license from whatever company had it before for energy drinks. And they made, there's a watermelon, there's a green apple. I had the watermelon yesterday. It's pretty good. This is the green apple. It's solid. That's a solid sour apple. I like the watermelon one. It's the problem, I guess it's not a problem per se. The 0-calorie nature of all of these drinks means that it tastes like someone decided to make a sugar-free Jolly Rancher. So it's like watermelon Jolly Rancher and then also chemicals. But don't worry, the chemicals are there to help you, right? So as you might have heard from the sound of my voice, I'm getting over yet another cold. Yesterday I had a fever that's gone. It's been going through the house again. Everyone else is pretty much fine. I am just the last one, and hopefully no one else gets it. Hopefully the baby doesn't get sick, and hopefully my wife doesn't get sick. But the other two kids got sick. So it's been an interesting few days here. Unrelated to this illness, but maybe another one. How much? Have you ever cleaned vomit out of a car? It's an adventure. My daughter had a situation in the vehicle. We were all dressed up. We're going to go get some family photos taken. So naturally, that happened on the way there, and just an exorcist like level of the back of this minivan just covered, man. And so we took it to a detail shop, and then the detail shop, I said, hey, if you can clean the car seat that is caked, covered with vomit, that would be awesome. And they went, yeah, okay, we'll take a look at it. And apparently take a look at it means we'll take it out of the car and throw it in the back of the van without cleaning it at all. And I was like, oh, okay. All right, well. At least you got most of it. I guess I still have to pull the carpet out from under this plastic and clean. They did not clean. They did not do an amazing job, but they did it was better than it was when I brought it there. So they were like, we might have to charge you a biohazard fee. I'm like, great, whatever. Yes, fine. Okay. This is acceptable to me, the puke man. Please do it. And so over the weekend, I don't know how many child car seats you've field stripped and cleaned, but it's been a few for me now. And you learn some things about the way these car seats are built when you completely take them apart to clean them. Let me tell you, I didn't a large part of them, a large part of the head area that is meant to absorb a child's head on impact. A big part of that is styrofoam. Who knew? Styrofoam, the magic savior of children. I don't know, but anyway. So whatever, everyone's fine now. except for me, who is kind of getting over it still a little bit. But that's as they say, as every parent in the history of parenting will apparently tell you, this is 100% normal. I'm like, yep, definitely. So yeah, I don't know. It's been an interesting handful of days here. But I did manage to play some video games somewhere in the middle of all this chaos. You know what? Let's take a quick break here, and we'll come back. We'll talk about some Dragon Age. So stay tuned. With the big wireless providers, what you see is never what you get. Somewhere between leaving the store and getting your first month's bill, the price you thought you were paying magically skyrockets. With Mint Mobile, you will never have to worry about those kind of gotchas ever again. Because when Mint Mobile says $15 a month when you purchase a 3-month plan, they mean it. Now, how does this work? Mint Mobile, you can just get on their website and you can just say, hey, I want service, and they will hook you up. If you have a phone that uses an eSIM or whatever, you can just do it right then and there and get it all going. If you have an older phone or, something that uses a physical SIM card, they will send you one in the mail. I got a FedEx envelope, the SIM card in it, like it was the Matrix. It was cool. And you just take that out, pop that out, activate it, put it in your phone. Boom. Good to go. And say good night and goodbye to overpriced wireless plans, jaw-dropping monthly bills, and unexpected overages. Mint Mobile is here to rescue you with premium wireless plans starting at just $15 a month. All those plans come with high-speed data and, of course, unlimited talk and text delivered on the nation's largest 5G network. You can use your own phone with any Mint Mobile plan and port your phone number over along with all your existing contacts and all that other stuff. Ditch overpriced wireless with Mint Mobile's deal and get 3 months of premium wireless service for $15 a month. Now, to get this new customer offer and your new 3-month premium wireless plan for just $15 a month, go to mintmobile.com/JeffG. That's mintmobile.com/JeffG. Cut your wireless bill to $15 a month at mintmobile.com/JeffG. $45 upfront payment required, equivalent to $15 a month. New customers on first 3-month plan only. Speeds slower above 40 gigabytes on unlimited plan. Additional taxes, fees, and restrictions apply. See Mint Mobile for details. So Dragon Age, I finally got my hands on it and was able to give it a spin. I'm still pretty early in it, but I am immediately impressed with it. I guess I had forgotten that along the way it was like, hey, we're just making an action game. Like, hey, all the stuff. Remember how Dragon Age used to be? You could pause the combat and do this and that and tactical this and that. At some point they were like, yeah, I mean, that stuff's fun, but what if we did this instead? And I actually think what they've done is really nice. It's all timing-based blocks and parries and perfect blocks and, skill trees that modify those things and, light attack that combos. The heavy attack on the warrior is like a shield bash, and that's feels pretty good as well. It is a really great-looking game. I've been playing it on a PC. My understanding is that it runs pretty well on a Steam Deck, which is interesting. I installed it, but haven't tried it there. And yeah, I don't know. I have been having a pretty good time with it. I think the writing in the game, at least from what I've seen so far, I think if maybe you've forgotten, I think like there's some people that are kind of like, I can't believe the writing is this way. It's like, yeah, I mean, it's a BioWare game. Like, it's kind of, this is sort of how they've kind of always written their games. I think there's some aspects of it that that are a little overly Marvelified, if we want to, if you want to, it's maybe a little too quippy in spots, but not as bad as some other games that have come out over the last couple of years. It definitely has some of that going on. But that's, again, I don't know. There's definitely been worse examples of that coming out over the last handful of years. And yeah, I don't know. It's I've been pretty impressed with it overall. But I am still pretty early on. I've seen people say all kinds of stuff, especially about the early parts of that game, where I've seen people say like, oh, it takes 8 hours before it gets good, or it feels like a tutorial or a recap or whatever for like the first 8 hours or so. You know, it seems like the writing is built in such a way to make sure that you know what's going on. And if you missed a thing, they're gonna make sure that you like, hey, you know, you can dig into this dialogue tree and figure some more out if you need to, and go that way with it. It's handholdy in that regard. It is like the way the WWE makes sure that you could tune in at any moment and there will be enough recaps and like announcers going, hey, by the way, this just happened, to make sure that you're up on what's happening. This game is, you know, kind of a little bit headed in that direction. And I think that's fine. I don't know. I think I'm guessing that there's some data points that they have gleaned over the years of making games like this, that they're like, hey, yeah, people get lost like all the fucking time and they have no idea what's happening, and they stop playing a game for a few weeks and they come back to it and they have no idea what is happening and they get back to it, you know. And so I don't know, like it almost seems like that they have kind of gone in that direction. There's some neat stuff in there in the character creator where you know, like they could have done the save import stuff that Mass Effect has done. But now it's been so long since the last Dragon Age game, and, you know, building the tools to get that save and what platform did that save exist on and whatever else is probably like a path not worth supporting. So instead what they've done is, like, as you're creating your character, on the last screen there's like a world state sort of thing where you can go in and say, you know, give like a few little details about like what happened in Inquisition, more or less, about like what choices do you want to have come out of Inquisition, and kind of, you know, dictate some state of the world type stuff going forward. It seems like very minor stuff. They even kind of downplay it in the menus that are just like, yeah, the defaults are fine. If you don't want to dick with this, you can. And so it's, you know, it's another case of like them finding ways to kind of tie in previous games without building all the save import stuff, which, you know, was cool when it worked. But yeah, I've been playing as a warrior, and it's, you know, you've got a big skill tree, and there's a lot of stuff around, you know, upgrading your parry so that if you do a perfect parry to projectile attacks, it'll redirect the projectile back at the enemy, and, you know, and there's a lot of difficulty customization. It feels like they're acknowledging like, hey, this used to not be a real-time game. Like, hey, this used to not just be a straight up fucking action game with some Batman ass combat in it. You know, it's not quite, I don't know, it's not quite the multi-directional Batman type thing, but it's a half man, I guess. And so they have settings in the difficulty that are around those parry windows and incoming damage and all of that. And so they give you a lot of options, and then just a straight up customization of just like, do you just want to set these yourself and just like, you know, fine tune the difficulty as you see fit. And I think that's probably the right answer too. Like, you know, but I guess my point is, like, I think players who are worried that they might not have the dexterity to play the game, it feels like there's enough tweaks and stuff you can do to the combat to make it so you'll get through it. You know, it might not be the most challenging or engaging combat at that point, but, you know, that's but I think that's acceptable as well. You know, it seems like that they will give you some fun tools to play with. The first fucking ability you get as a warrior is just a straight up drop kick. Like, you just, you know, you hit like L2 and square or whatever, and if you have enough rage, then he will just fucking run up and drop kick a dude. And you can drop kick guys off cliffs and shit, which is a very, you know, it's got a very Dark Messiah of Might and Magic thing going on there early on, where you're just booting fucking guys off of ledges and shit, and you're like, yes, this is bad fucking ass. Like, it looks great. It feels pretty nice. Like, the combat feels like fine so far. You know, it seems like that there's more to do, and you know, obviously, like being pretty early on in the game, It feels like, hey, you look at that skill tree, you look at the different abilities, the warrior's going to get a stomp that disorients enemies around him, stuff like that. And I don't know, that stuff seems cool. And yeah, I don't know. Like I'm really looking forward to, Dragon Age for me was something that I was not always, like I would kind of respect it from a distance. And then when the last one came out, I was with my wife, and she was a big Dragon Age fan, and she liked the first 2 games quite a bit. And she played through Inquisition, I think 2 or 3 different times, choosing different options. And so I saw a lot of Inquisition when that game came out, and played a chunk of it for myself as well. And I thought that was a pretty good game for what it was, and I think that this has the potential to be really great. Like I said, I'm early on, so I don't necessarily want to like stamp it and say this is an amazing video game, but I think it's got a lot going for it out of the gate, and I'm enjoying it quite a bit. So I'm really looking forward to spending some more time with it. The characters so far seem interesting. Solus still fucking sucks. Solus is still a fucking worthless sack of shit. A motherfucker. Want to kick him off a cliff? If I can drop kick that dude off a cliff, then that game will be pretty good. Pretty good. But yeah, I don't know. It's neat. Other than that, we're getting into that kind of end of the year season where I've got a lot of weird access to a lot of versions of games that are not quite finished, and that I'm not, able to use for any kind of coverage purposes. And so I've been playing some interesting games behind the scenes here, that I can't quite talk about just yet, but well, in a little, well, I don't know, not all that soon actually, now that I'm thinking about it, but I've been fucking around with Call of Duty as well. That's kind of been that has become my end of the night game. I'm gonna mess with this play a couple of matches here and then let it go. I still need to finish the campaign. I haven't had time to, just with the kids being sick and everything. Like it's been a lot of me like running up the stairs in the middle of the night and stuff. So I've mostly been playing multiplayer. And I don't know, I like what I've seen of the campaign so far. The first chunk of it or whatever, has been fun in like a Mission Impossible kind of dumb over the top kind of way. But like they added the Nuketown map to the game, and did a double XP weekend and stuff. So I don't know, I've been fucking around with weapon builds and unlocking more of the stuff that I want and trying to get there. I'm in like level 35 or something. It really seems like if you're really dedicated to cruising through the leveling curve and prestiging, that you could really focus on some stuff and get it done in a hurry. And they've made some adjustments to kind of boost some modes to give you more XP and cut XP in some of the other modes that were maybe a little faster to maybe kind of change the way people are leveling. And I think that seems fine. I don't know. Some of the stuff about the way they've taken it like old school or whatever is kind of, I don't know. It seems a little detrimental or like, I don't know, like it's old school, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's better. Like the way that they've gone back to like classic prestiging where everything relocks, but you get like one unlock token. So you can choose a gun or a perk or something that you just want to have unlocked all the time. And every time you prestige, you get to, early unlock one more thing. And, but which was fine for the olden days. But now, and they haven't started this yet, they have not ramped up this end of the game, but now they are also going to sell a bunch of guns and skins and like not necessarily like sell the guns, but they're going to sell weird blueprints and skins for guns that you may not have unlocked yet. And so you'll end up in these situations where you're like, oh, well, if I want to have this gun unlocked all the time, I could spend a prestige token on it. Or if I buy this blueprint, then I will always have this gun unlocked no matter what also. And so it's sort of a weird... Well, I'm interested in seeing, like, once they really start rolling out the gun stuff. And this doesn't strike me as something they're doing on purpose. It strikes me as like a two-pronged thing of like, we want to redo prestige to make it matter again. And the best way we can think of is to roll back the clock and make it old school. But also this game now sells gun blueprints and skins and a zillion other things over here. How do we reconcile this old concept with the way things are now? And I think it's going to lead to a little bit of weirdness here once they do start selling that stuff. Or I guess my point is, if you feel like you're the sort of person that might buy skins in a video game, if you're a person who's not, you're like, oh, when cool skins come, because usually like a player skin comes with a gun or something like that, then I would say maybe don't ever use an unlock token on a gun, because that's the thing they sell the most of. So it's, I don't know, it'll be interesting to see how they reconcile all of that stuff. But I feel like when the time comes and I hit the level cap, and I probably will, like that, like I think the game is very good. I think it's a very, very good year for them, in terms of the competitive multiplayer and that sort of stuff. I probably will hit the level cap. I probably will prestige, and I'll probably use I don't know what I'll use, because the thing that I'll unlock permanently might be, there's a wild card that lets you add 3 more attachments to your gun. So it takes it from 5 attachments to 8, which is nuts. Or it just is cool to be able to fucking do. That might be something, that might be what I go for, but anyway. Yeah, still fucking around with that game, every day, every couple of days here for 10 or 20 minutes at a time. And I need to just kind of, once things settle down here, another 5% or so, I'll be able to just kind of blast through the rest of the campaign. But I've got like 20 other games that I need to fuck with as well. So it's kind of, it's hard to make time for that when I'm got all this Dragon Age and some other exciting stuff that I'm playing currently. I'm sorry. I don't mean that to sound like I'm bragging about anything or what. It's just like, it is the state of things. I am currently playing a handful of games that are, for like game of the year purposes and not for coverage purposes and blah, 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 blah. And so there will be a time to talk about those games later, but now is not said time because it's November, right? And that's just how it goes sometimes. I'm going to take one more break here and try and gargle some salt water or something. And then we'll come back and we'll get into the news. How about that? One of the nice things about Black Friday and Cyber Monday, like the whole like holiday sale season thing, is stumbling into an amazing deal that you wouldn't normally get. Except with Raycon. Because with Raycon, you get an amazing deal on premium audio every day of the year. But wait! That doesn't mean they're not having any sales for Black Friday. Far from it, they're actually doubling down on this amazing value by offering you up to 30% off site-wide. That's right. A Black Friday deal you'll appreciate every day? Raycon's everyday earbuds. If you haven't checked out the latest model, it's got plenty of new features, and it's got super long battery life, 32 hours of battery life. It's got multi-point connectivity, so you can pair it to 2 devices at once, which is handy if you're moving from like a game machine to your phone or whatever you got going on. Active noise canceling, which is great. If you're in noisy environments, there's been a bunch of trucks out here lately. It's been a noise canceling kind of week around here, let me tell you. And you can find all that stuff at an accessible price point because Raycon's not messing around. Raycon's quality rivals some of the biggest names in premium audio, and Raycon's start at just half the price as some of those other guys. So it's already an incredible deal before you factor in this Black Friday deal of up to 30% off site-wide. What? Deals on top of deals on top of deals. That long battery life. It's real nice. They got multiple sound modes, so if you're looking for like a little bass boost in there, the everyday earbuds have your back. They're also available in a variety of vibrant colors, so you just don't need to, go with white or black or whatever. I got a purple pair here. Purple. I thought that would be fun. It is fun, and now is the perfect time to scoop them up if you haven't already. And don't worry, if you're not impressed, Raycon offers a 30-day happiness guarantee, so you really can't lose. It's time to save big for Black Friday. Go to buyraycon.com/JeffG today to get up to 30% off site-wide. That's right. You'll get up to 30% off everything on Raycon's website when you go to buyraycon.com/JeffG. And now it's time for the news. Big week this week. The launch of the PS5 Pro is just 2 days away. Did everyone get your pre-orders in? Are you listening to this podcast from out in front of a Target? Are you waiting in line to score one of these hot items? A lot of the talk about a lot of the consumer desire that I feel like I have seen anecdotally has not really materialized for this in a way that I can't say that I find it surprising that people are a little down on it conceptually. At the same time, yeah, I don't know. The PlayStation 4 Pro, I remember there was a similar sentiment, but maybe not as extreme as it is now. And maybe that speaks to just the further development of the PC as a platform. And maybe people have moved over to PC and are kind of like opting out of this like weird console power race completely. But also, I think there is that general vibe that some people feel like that there have just not been enough games for the big games for the current generation of consoles. Big games, I think, is the differentiator there, because I think if you were probably to total up the total number of video games available on PlayStation 5 compared to, this many years in on PS4, I bet that number would be higher. But qualitatively, it's maybe a different story. Someone wrote in and said, hey, is the Monster Hunter Wilds beta a big advertisement for the PS5 Pro? And I was like, oh, right, yes. Because that thing apparently ran like garbage. It's a beta. They'll have time to optimize, presumably. So yeah, I don't know. It's an interesting time. It is in an interesting generation. Not to just recap the last several years, but all of this has led to a situation where this PS5 Pro is coming out, and I think people just don't seem like they're down, or rather, the people who were always going to be down are still down. When Sony asked, "Are you still down?" a lot of people said, "Sure, yes, absolutely." And going forward, this will be a thing that, like, maybe people choosing a console for the first time, maybe they'll opt into this. Maybe they'll have a system seller down the line with GTA 6 or something. If like, hey, if GTA 6 runs significantly better on a Pro than it does on a base, maybe you end up in a situation there that helps move things. But yeah, it's they're having a hard time. I feel like they're having a hard time getting the message across as to why you would want this thing. And they ran into similar issues when the PlayStation 4 Pro was launching. but I've seen a lot of breakdowns of like, oh, well, the PS4 Pro was actually a more significant bump over the base PS4 than the PS5 Pro is over the base PS5. And so it's not, I think that just speaks to some of the diminishing returns we're seeing around visual quality and performance across the board here. Stuff could always run better. That's going to be true to the end of time. That's part of why Dragon Age on PC impressed me so much, is like out of the box, day one, ran fucking real nice, looked great. I'm sure that they probably are working on multiple patches for things that I just haven't run into. But it was that feeling of like, oh wow, this feels like really well optimized for where it is. I turned it all the fucking way up. Because I'm like, this is a 4090, goddammit. I should be able to do this, right? This is a whatever, I guess it's now one generation behind because Intel just rolled out their stuff, right? But like, this is a pretty modern PC. I should be able to crank this fucking thing up. And so it's got settings in the ray tracing for like, by default, they'll only use ray tracing on things that they think will matter. And you can turn that up to like, no, I want to ray trace all the stuff. And then even below that, there's a toggle that's like, do you want the ray tracing to be really good? And I'm like, yeah, I guess. And it's running fucking awesome. And maybe that just speaks to like, it's Steam Deck verified. So perhaps they just spent an extra amount of time ensuring that the game was well optimized to run on a lot of different machines, which I think is smart work to be doing these days. Again, when you look at the Steam hardware survey and what the average PC is out there, it's not this fucking weird machine that I have with all this fucking gear in it. Something several generations behind that, and those people want their games to not run like shit as well. So yeah, I don't know, that stuff's interesting, but that's all to say that like the performance conversation has gotten weird. And I don't know, like the types of performance situations we see in games that don't perform well at launch aren't always things that get fixed. Like, are people happy with the way that Star Wars Jedi Survivor runs on consoles these days? Like, did that ever truly get there? Even though they've had a year or so to patch it. Anyway, all that leads to this. Here we are a couple of days before the launch of the PlayStation 5 Pro. Sony Interactive Entertainment's own Tim Turry has posted a list of the over 50 games that will be PS5 Pro enhanced at launch. It's an interesting list of like, hey, there's some older stuff on this list that's first party, and that makes sense that they would do that work because they're testing the thing out and figuring it out, and along the way they're patching some games. It's a good wide swath of games, recent and not so recent. And the list is as follows: Alan Wake 2, Albatross, Apex Legends, Assassin's Creed Mirage, Baldur's Gate 3, Call of Duty Black Ops 6, EA Sports College Football 25, Dead Island 2, Demon's Souls, Diablo 4, Dragon Age The Veilguard, Dragon's Dogma 2, Dying Light 2 Reloaded Edition, EA Sports FC 25, Enlisted, F1 24, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, Fortnite, God of War Ragnarok, Hogwarts Legacy, Horizon Forbidden West, Horizon Zero Dawn Remastered, Kayak VR, Mirage, Lies of P, Lords of the Fallen 2023, Madden NFL 25, Marvel's Spider-Man Remastered, Marvel's Spider-Man Miles Morales, Marvel's Spider-Man 2, Naraka Blade Point, NBA 2K25, No Man's Sky, Pal World, Paladin's Passage, Planet Coaster 2, Professional Spirits Baseball 2024-2025, Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart, Resident Evil 4, Resident Evil Village, Rise of the Ronin, Rogue Flight, Star Wars Jedi Survivor, Star Wars Outlaws, Stellar Blade, Test Drive Unlimited Solar Crown, The Callisto Protocol, The Crew Motorfest, The Finals, The First Descendant, The Last of Us Part 1, The Last of Us Part 2 Remastered, Until Dawn, War Thunder, Warframe, and World of Warships Legends. That's a decent list, I guess. Dragon's Dogma 2 is a game that would probably benefit from a little bit more power. I know they've done a lot of optimization work since launch, but, we don't really know. They're not really breaking down here exactly what each game is going to use, in terms of what sort of what sort of power they're, what sort of modes they're going to do. Obviously, some games will experiment with 120 hertz. Some games will just have, more rays getting traced, that sort of stuff. Some games will still run at 30, but have, more beautifuler graphics, I guess. Gran Turismo not on this list. That was a game that I believe they were showing to press, so presumably that will come here. The thing that Mr. Turi says here is this list is a sample of more than 50 games boasting PS5 Pro enhancements at launch, with many more to follow. So, this is just kind of like the stuff that's going to be available this week, it looks like. And, more will be coming later. I assume this means that Gran Turismo is missing a launch, but we'll see. It's interesting. We talked about it a little bit because Rod Ferguson said as much about Diablo 4, but now Call of Duty Black Ops 6 is also on the list. It's interesting to have games that are basically Microsoft releases now being in this situation where, like, okay, I guess, like, in a weird way, the Xbox might actually end up being the worst place to play those games. Just by virtue of, there's a more powerful PlayStation out, and obviously you can do better on a PC. Of course, you can do a lot worse than a PC, so, it's kind of all over the place. But it's an interesting scenario that we've ended up in here, right? Where it's like, oh, like, they're kind of, like, they're at the bottom end of the power curve, even with the Series X. I guess the other half of that, I would say, is, based on the level of interest people have shown in the PS5 Pro, this does not seem like something that actually matters. It's a fun thing to talk about here. In a, like, oh, wow, weird. Oh, yeah, the games that they own are now going to, this is their hardware is not up to snuff. But in the grand scheme of things, it doesn't actually seem like this stuff matters the same way. And obviously the Series S is the Series S. That's, all of these feel like dominoes being set up. Like, the stuff around Call of Duty on Game Pass, which, they put out some very Microsoft looking metrics for this, which I mean to say are more engagement focused than on money or sales or whatever, which is usually what Call of Duty, they would put out their press release that was like, we've sold in the 3-day period, we've sold this many copies and it's blowing up big and oh my God, it's huge. And instead it was more like, this was the biggest day of Game Pass subscriptions ever in terms of engagement and people playing the game. It's up across all platforms, even on PlayStation, and we're combining that with some of the engagement data that Circana puts out and some of the UK physical and digital sales information that's out there. And it seems like, about what you'd expect on the Xbox side. Sales of the game seem to be down in the UK, but engagement of the game on Xbox is skyrocketing. it's bigger than they've ever been, which would make sense because it's on Game Pass. But even on PlayStation, it is still up more than it is. And I think some of that speaks to, there just being a lot of interest in the game this year, and also it being a pretty good version of the game. A pretty good game this year overall. But that's a game that already runs at 120 frames per second if you're so equipped on a PlayStation or an Xbox. And so I'm not 100% sure what sort of option, what sort of options they're taking advantage of for Black Ops 6 when it comes to the PS5 Pro. I'll be interested to see, how that works. All this stuff, to be honest, like I am curious to talk about some of this stuff, and maybe we'll capture some of it and do something with it. I don't know. Apex Legends is on that list, as you would expect it to be. I think, Respawn, I want to say Titanfall 2 may have been the first PS4 Pro game I ever actually played. Apex is also in the news for some of their anti-cheat stuff. They posted something last week basically saying if you play this game on a Steam Deck, sorry, you can't do that anymore. They have decided to block Linux access to the game. I'll just read some of the stuff. In our efforts to combat cheating in Apex, we've identified Linux OS as being a path for a variety of impactful exploits and cheats. As a result, we've decided to block Linux OS access to the game. While this will impact a small number of Apex players, we believe the decision will meaningfully reduce instances of cheating in our game. Linux is used by default on the Steam Deck. There is currently no reliable way for us to differentiate a legitimate Steam Deck from a malicious client claiming to be a Steam Deck via Linux. To eliminate this cheat vector, we have made the decision to prevent access to the game for Linux users. This means that Apex Legends will be unplayable immediately for those running this OS. Playing on handhelds such as the Steam Deck is still possible if the user opts to install Windows. That's not a, hey, buddy, you should install Windows on your Steam Deck. No, I should not. So this seems like a very calculated step that they would take based on the number of players who are playing the game on Linux overall, and how many of those they can see as like, oh, these are actual Steam Decks, and how many of the cheats that they're encountering are from people that are running Linux to, potentially enable those cheats or whatever. And so presumably they sat down and said, hey, there's just not enough use on Linux overall for us to like cater to the small number of Steam Deck players. I think it really sucks, but I understand where they're coming from, because they have to protect the game. Because cheating is the thing that kills online games like this. They have to take that stuff very seriously. And if that's really what they're seeing, and they can't stop it on Linux, which, that's something, I would like to see more dev efforts put into these sorts of solutions just working better on Linux. But then you get into these 9 zillion different flavors of Linux. And are you going to support them all? Are you going to do this? Maybe that just becomes too much for developers to take on for an audience that is probably still going to be pretty small. I do think that, if you are a player of Apex Legends and you are unwilling to play it on another platform, they should be refunding any money you've spent on the game. They have not said anything at all about that in their announcements. Also, I don't like, how many people could that possibly be, really? 12? How many players only play the game? How many people will only play the game on a Steam Deck and now will not play the game at all? I assume that's a very small number. And so on both sides of that, I would say They should say, hey, we'll work to refund any money that if we can look at your account and prove that you've only played it on a Steam Deck, we'll give you your money back, or or whatever. I think that that's a rational, reasonable sort of thing if they want to pursue that avenue. If they're like, nope, I'm not going to play this on PC, I'm not going to take this, I'm not going to move this to another platform, this is the only way I want to play the game, and now I can't, fuck you, then I think EA should be able to be like, hey, yeah, no, you're right. Here's the season pass money back, or whatever. But yeah, I don't know. It's I want to see more Steam Deck support, not less. And so I think this is really deflating in a sense, to see developers kind of take this easy way out. And I can't blame them for taking the easy way out, because at the end of the day, they are looking at the numbers and all of that sort of stuff, and they have to make these calls. If there was a significant portion of players playing on Steam Deck, they would find a way. They would figure it out. But it's not worth it for them to figure it out. And so they aren't. It's a bummer. Because that goes for all of the games that are currently blocked on a Steam Deck for anti-cheat reasons. I think that really sucks. Call of Duty, Destiny, those are the two that affect me probably the most. When Rumbleverse was running, there was a glorious period of time there where Rumbleverse ran on a Steam Deck. Of course, it was an Epic exclusive, so you had to do some funky shit to make that work in the first place. And then they made a change to their anti-cheat or something, but after a patch, it completely stopped working, and it was a bummer. Not the only bummer about Rumbleverse, but what are you going to do? Nintendo has issued its financial information for the quarter, or I guess for the last 6 months, ending September 30th is what the earnings are covering. In terms of the dividend they're paying out and blah, blah, blah. I think the parts of this that are maybe germane to us here are really just kind of around like, hey, guess what? Not as many people are buying the Nintendo Switch anymore. It's a shock, isn't it? That, hey, if you go 6 months without releasing massive games the same way maybe you did a year ago, that maybe, here a console, a platform nearing the end of its life cycle is going to be down. They have lowered their sales forecast as a result of this decline. They've lowered their forecast for going forward. There are analysts, according to Reuters, saying that that maybe that's maybe even their changed forecast might be hard for them to hit. But also, everyone is looking forward to the announcement of the new console. And Nintendo has said, hey, none of our plans have changed around that. They plan to announce it before the end of their fiscal year, which means we would hear about it, I guess, by the end of March, or sometime in April, or no, before April, I think is the phrasing on that. Of course, they can't announce it right now because they're going into a holiday season and saying, hey, the next console is coming right when they're trying to get their last gasp of holiday sales. Would just be dumb for them to do. So they're going to kind of ride this out. Obviously, Mario and Luigi brothership is coming out this week, and then they have a couple of things announced for Q1. But we're nearing the end of the road, right? It's not shocking that the Switch maybe isn't selling what it was a year ago or 2 years ago or 3. This is its 8th year. And I feel like that even the first party games, to a certain extent, aren't shining the way you want them to. You go look at the Zelda game that came out this year, and just like the performance on it gets in the way. Like that's the thing that is the main thing with Nintendo is Nintendo never really wants to be in a position where the technology feels like it's getting in the way. But with Pokemon games, they've seen that time and time again. Obviously, that hasn't really been a major impact on the sales of those games. But as time has gone on, the system was relatively underpowered when it came out, and we were talking frame rates docked versus undocked the week that thing shipped, and those conversations have only gotten less kind as the years have worn on. So, obviously, it's time. And the software lineup and some of the other stuff that they have announced or rather not announced, I think really tells the tale of like, hey, yeah, it's time. So I'm really looking forward to seeing what they end up announcing and how they end up iterating on the Switch. Obviously, we're at a stage where smaller third-party developers are doing that kind of wink and nod style announcement where they're like, and we're coming to future Nintendo platforms. Like, okay. But we're not there yet in terms of like, hey, here's the actual specs, here's this, here's that. I mean, there's plenty of information out there that I think you could probably cull together. You could put together a solid look at like, here's what this thing is. And unless there's some kind of left field feature on it, like if it's within range of the Alarmo, it gets a 10% power boost, based on the, as long as your Alarmo is not running Doom, it will be fine, and I guess that's the thing I want to know most is like, is there something up Nintendo's sleeve around what this thing is and what it will do? Or are we going to look at it and be like, oh, you've made a more powerful Switch? I think that that's fine. I just want to get back to the point where Nintendo is putting out a steady stream of big ass games. And it feels, obviously this year for them has maybe not been their biggest year software wise. They've had some great stuff last year. But they're on the downward swing here with they're sliding into home, I guess I would say, here at this point. So if we look at the software sales and and the amount of time that has passed since the last one, I think it's I think we're due for a Mario Kart. Call me crazy. But I think we're due for a Mario Kart. So let's see here. As of September 30th, 2024, the Nintendo Switch has sold 146.04 million units. And its number one piece of software is Mario Kart 8 Deluxe at 64.27 million fucking units. That is like number 2 is Animal Crossing at 46 million, and number 3 is Smash at 35. Like 64 million copies of Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. That's a lot of Mario Kart. When we go back to the Wii U, because they have these charts for going all the way back to the DS. Do you know what the number one selling game on the Wii U was? Fucking Mario Kart. Mario Kart 8 non-deluxe was the top seller at 8.46 million units. In second place is Mario 3D World with 5.89. On the 3DS, do you know what the number one selling 3DS game is? It's Mario Kart fucking 7 at 18.99 million units. When we go back to the Wii, what's the number one game? It's Wii Sports. Don't be stupid. But number 2, Mario Kart Wii at 37.38 million units. And on the DS, it's New Super Mario Brothers at 30.8 million. Then it's Nintendogs at 23.9. And then Mario Kart DS at 23.6. So, you know, if we go all the way back to the DS, it doesn't fall anywhere below third place. I think Mario Kart DS is you know, like not a great game. I think Mario Kart Wii is kind of like whatever. I think the most recent swing of 7 and 8, as much as I'm not much of a Mario Kart fan, I think they are very well made games. But when you look at this and you think about the amount of time that has passed since there's been a wholly new Mario Kart, because remember, the Mario Kart we got on Switch is just a reissue of the Wii U game that they supported with a fresh batch of DLC, and they added more stuff to, you know. Some might say that we are extremely overdue for a new Mario Kart. I would think, again, this is not the first time I've said this, but like going back over these numbers and looking at it again, it seems painfully clear that the next Switch should launch with a Mario Kart game. Or at least have one in the first year, because sometimes Nintendo likes to launch with like, hey, it's Mario, or hey, it's Zelda. I mean, last time they launched with both, right? And so sometimes they want to launch with their big kind of marquee thing, right? Their kind of mainline Mario, mainline Zelda, whatever. I think it's a little too soon for a mainline Zelda. I could see a Mario game. You know, it's been quite a while since, well, Wonder is not that, Wonder is not that old, man. Wonder is not that old. You know, Odyssey 2 or something, I don't know, there's something, maybe. But I could see them doing, I'd have to look and see the team makeup of Wonder versus who worked on Odyssey and see if it's like different enough that maybe they're doing like an A/B thing, that maybe the Odyssey crew comes back with Odyssey 2, or anyway, I'd have to stare at credits long enough to fill in the blanks on that one. I don't keep the Nintendo development teams in my head the way a lot of other people do. But looking at these numbers, it seems like Mario Kart 9 should be a launch game or a very early release for the next Switch. Unless they want to just go Mario Kart 8 Deluxe and say, hey, all your stuff carries over, but there's another season pass you can buy. But I would think they would much rather sell you a full piece of software than you know, an online expansion pass or whatever else for another year of tracks or whatever. I could maybe see that, you know, like looking at this list. Pokemon on the Switch doesn't hit until we get down past, like, it's number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's like number 6 and 7. Sword and Shield did 26.4. Scarlet and Violet did 25.6. Which means that both of those games outsold Tears of the Kingdom, but not Breath of the Wild. Yeah, it's an interesting list here, but there's, you know, the story around the Switch, you know, is like, oh, the sales declined and oh my God, and they're 10%, they're cutting forecasts and they're, you know, slashing their forecasts because the numbers are down 30% or whatever. But like, yeah, no shit. Fast Scout asks, Tears of the Kingdom sold less than 24 million. Tears of the Kingdom is in here at 21.04 million, which puts it just ahead of Super Mario Party at 20.98. Disturbing. disturbing. But yeah, if you want the full list, of Switch games to date right now, again, this is as of September 30th. It's Mario Kart 8 Deluxe at 64.2. It's Animal Crossing with 46.4, Smash with 35.1, Breath of the Wild with 32.2, Super Mario Odyssey at 28.5, Sword and Shield with 26.4, Scarlet and Violet with 25.7, Tears of the Kingdom at 21, Super Mario Party at just under 21, and then New Super Mario Brothers U Deluxe at 17.77. Which is a weird list, man. I don't, like, all joking aside, the idea that Super Mario Party sells that well, I'm surprised. Again, put the jokes aside about how, like, Super Mario Party is a criminal act and that, there should be a tribunal held about, the game in general, but the idea that Super Mario Party does well enough to make this top 10 list, I'm surprising. I'm surprised. So the thing is that this does include bundles. They put some asterisks here at the bottom. The numbers shown above are worldwide consolidated sales in units lifetime to date. Software units include the quantity bundled with hardware or other products. Software units include the downloadable versions. And the package images shown above are for the Japanese market. So, yeah. We'll see where this ends up, I guess, when the Switch is all said and done. If anything else cracks this top 10. I mean, there are a lot of Switches out there, right? But we'll see. Mario Party 10 is at the number 10 spot on the Wii U list at 2.27 million. Even that seems too high. To me, a sane person. Lastly, in the news, Konami has, I guess, there is a soundtrack set coming out for Castlevania. They're taking pre-orders for it, for a Q1 release. And I just was fucking blown away. They're selling this box set. It is $550. Music from Castlevania, Black and Red, original game soundtracks. It is $550. It is 46 fucking records. 46. You get a giant box. Do you want to start a record collection overnight? Do you want to go from owning 0 records to 46? For $550, you could fucking 46 fucking records, man. The track list they put out is only breaks it down by game. It doesn't break out, but that's going to be a lot of fucking versions. It's going to be a lot of fucking versions of Bloody Tears on there, right? I mean, this goes from the origins of the franchise. The first record has Castlevania, Dracula 2, Noroi no Fuuin, Akumajo Dracula for the MSX, Castlevania 2, Simon's Quest. The last record, LP 45 and 46, has Castlevania Harmony of Despair for 360 and PS3 on it. But it's like, if you've ever wanted a vinyl recording of the Order of Ecclesia soundtrack, it's here. It's on 3 records. Because it's 46 records. That's just an insane number of records to me. This is the Materia store is selling this stuff. They kind of specialize in video game music soundtracks and all of that. Selling that stuff specifically on vinyl. And I am not going to buy this. But I was stricken. Like when I loaded this page up, because it was like someone was like, "Oh, this new Castlevania soundtrack." I was like, "Oh, what's up with that?" And then I clicked through, and it was 46 records. I just some of those are new recordings, liner notes from Jeremy Parrish. The first 23 records are on black vinyl. 24 through 43 are on red vinyl. But what about, wait, I mean, there's 46 discs though. Are last discs a different color? Oh well. It's a lot of records. In conclusion, that's a lot of records. Let's see here. Yeah, Netflix is removing all of its interactive stuff, or almost all of its interactive stuff. That's according to Video Games Chronicle. 20 of the 24 specials will be gone by December 1st. They're leaving that Black Mirror one up, which seems like the only one that anyone ever talked about. But they're also leaving up Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt, Kimmy versus the Reverend. So, yeah. But yes, the Black Mirror Bandersnatch will remain. Which I wonder, I mean, I guess they're probably taking those down. There was a WWE one that looks real stupid, but like in maybe a fun way. I don't know. The quote that The Verge got on this is that the interactive special idea had, quote, served its purpose, but is now limiting as we focus on technological efforts in other areas. So, if it's technologically limiting, then why are they leaving 4 of them up? Because wouldn't they have to, like, wouldn't all the technology have to fucking still remain somewhere in their stack if they're going to support those 4 that are staying there? It seems like a kind of a weird, a weird situation. I don't know. Netflix, what the fuck are you gonna do? I don't know. Mike Verdu is now like the head of like generative AI at Netflix, and they're all in on that stuff from the looks of things. So if you thought that next Netflix games output was weird and scattershot before, now it's going to get embarrassing in a whole new way. Congratulations to everyone involved. Nailing it over there. That's it for the news. Why don't we check out some emails? I need to load up the email for me to do that. As it turns out, you have to load the email client to read the email. Let's see here. Podcast@guard.bike is the email address. Send me some emails, and I will check them out. The ones I like, I'll put a little star next to them. And then they'll be on a separate list of emails that have a little star next to them. Jeff from Connecticut writes in and says, pitch me a Waluigi game. What should a Waluigi game look or play like? I think it'd be cool to see him as Nintendo's first-person shooter franchise. Well, Jeff, it's pinball. There was a conversation happening online about this over the last 7 days, and it's pinball. Waluigi should be the face of Nintendo's pinball efforts going forward. We should have a Waluigi's Pinball Land and start from there. You know, the big pinball rolling down the track in Mario Kart. It's just, yeah, capitalize on that. Michael from Kansas City, Missouri writes in to say, Grand Theft Auto 6 will likely be the biggest release we've seen in quite some time. What dumb thing could you see Rockstar forcing or demanding players to do with so many people buying the game? make GTA Plus required for online play, add a subscription fee to GTA Online. What should we be afraid of before buying GTA 6? Yeah, I mean, that would be a thing. I don't think they would do it because I think there's more money to be made by not doing that and offering optional subscriptions. I think they've proven already that that's an effective method for them. And so presumably GTA Plus will get you something in that game when they do roll all that stuff out. But I think it would be weird for them to add a baseline subscription fee to that service, because I think that a big part of why that game was successful is that you could buy the game and try it. They'll sell millions and millions of copies of that game already. And so they will get the $70, or, I'm sure that they'll have some version that comes with a razor blade or a bullet or a fucking pack of cards that are sharp like razor blades, or I don't know, some kind of a lockbox, or a miniature safe, or like a bottle that you can screw open to hide drugs in. I don't know what are they going to do with their crazy high end edition. Something Florida. Yeah, like an alligator that screws open and you can put drugs in it. Sure, why not? And so they'll make their money off of selling the game, and then they will monetize the way that they probably have been monetizing. I'm sure they've been experimenting and figuring out a lot of that stuff very well over the course of GTA 5's run, right? As they've tried a lot of different things in terms of how they roll out new content and the things they sell alongside that new content, and fine-tuning that offering so well. So really the problem they're going to run into is, how do you get people to switch? Is just, hey, all the new content is going to be in GTA 6 now? Will that be enough for everyone to switch and stop playing GTA 5 online? What do you give players who have put thousands of hours into the previous one? Do you carry any of that progress over? Are you going to make people start fresh? Will people be willing to do that? Like, how do you not split the user base there in ways that, like, oh, well, we still have a bunch of people playing GTA 5, and so we have to put new cars into that game for another year because they'll buy them. Meanwhile, we're struggling to get GTA 6 off the ground because all of our diehard players are stuck on. It's like the Payday 2, Payday 3 situation, but much bigger and weirder, where I don't think GTA 6 is going to be in this situation, but you never know. But like when Payday 3 launched, it launched rough, and before too long, more players were playing Payday 2, and now, like, recently, they're on kind of a comeback tour, trying to say, like, hey, Payday 3 is better now. You should cover it. You should do something with it. I think they've started sponsoring streams again, like trying to get people to notice Payday 3. But yeah, I don't know, like, there is certainly a fear of missing out. If you're not playing the newest, latest GTA Online and all your friends move over, then you will move over. But what if all your friends stay on 5? And what? What if a lot of people stay on 5 and they don't make the jump? I want to see what that upgrade process or what that migration process looks like. If there's any kind of, like, hey, we're going to allow you to bring one car and this amount of money, like, will they make a storyline for the end of GTA Online that is like a getaway? Like, the town's too hot, you've got to get out of here. You can only afford to take one briefcase and one car. So get in this car and stuff this briefcase full of money and then hit the road. And then you get to GTA 6 and then you're like, okay, this is the migration. You got your one car with its upgrades, if those even make sense in this new world, along with X number of dollars to start off with. you know, because there's stuff like that. There are narrative things they could do to try to, you know, smooth this process over and also explain away why your empire that you maybe have already bought hundreds of shark cards to invest in is not going to make the trip with you to Florida or whatever. So yeah, I don't know. I think there's a lot of, like, that's a very high stakes situation that they're going to walk into. And I'm sure it's something that they have spent a very long time thinking about. And it could be as easy as, hey, we're going to shut it down. I think that's fucking terrifying if you're Take-Two. Hey, this thing that's been printing money for us for years now, turn it off and turn the new one on. Because the last time they turned a new one on, it was Red Dead Online. And that's not a pure apples to apples thing, but clearly Red Dead Online did not do the types of numbers that they hoped it would. So yeah, how they handle that and how they kind of gently or not gently push people into GTA 6. You know, they won't have to push people. Like, people want GTA 6. It's not a situation where they got to twist people's arms to get the new GTA. And I think the people that have been playing GTA Online for a long time would probably be more than ready for a change of scenery. And they would probably be, in a lot of cases, willing to give up whatever they earned or bought in the old game for that change of scenery. I could be wrong, but yeah, it's hard to get a grip on how big of a deal that is, because again, you know, they have so many people playing that game already, and to put out a new one, if they fuck that up, then they split the user base, and then the GTA 5 players maybe aren't as excited to play that anymore, and the GTA 6 players are complaining about what that game is missing, and you end up in a situation where people are just generally unhappy with it and start to move somewhere else. That's maybe a worst case scenario or something. I don't really know, but there was EA had their earnings call relatively recently, and people were asking about Apex, because the Apex numbers were down a little bit, and which for a game as old as Apex is now, I can't say I'm surprised by that. There's a lot of other stuff. You know, you sometimes you just have your fill of a game, and it doesn't matter what's on the new season pass. You're like, I'm good. I'm going to go do something else with my time. I think that's a very natural thing that maybe doesn't happen as often as it should. But anyway, the question was like, hey, what do you do here? Are you when basically it was a question around the notion of like, when is Apex 2? Or what do you do here? When do you launch your new thing? And there was and the question, the response was kind of like, hey, we don't really see the company doing an Apex 2 because it's risky. You potentially lose a lot of your players that don't make the jump, and so it's a better investment on our end to continue to provide new things for the existing Apex base inside of the existing Apex client, rather than go and start up a whole sequel like say Overwatch 2 did, or some Payday 3, some of these other sequels to big online games that have maybe not pleased the existing audience to the degree that they should. I think that's smart. As much as like I would be interested in seeing a fully overhauled, full-on sequel to Apex and what that might look like and what that might mean, they're kind of locked in. And I think that's the downside to it, right? Is you look at like Fortnite. Fortnite did a really good job of like, they migrated to Unreal Engine 5. Look at World of Warcraft when they, all those years in, had their big client overhaul to improve the graphics. I mean, you could argue that maybe they're in line for another one of those these days, but it's a nicer looking game than it was 500 years ago when World of Warcraft launched. But those types of overhauls, I think, are, somewhat necessary for some of these games if they're truly going to last years and years and years and years and years. eventually that's a good problem to have, right? Eventually you're like, man, our game made it so many years and is so popular that like now the tech looks fucking insanely old, and boy, we've got to do something to spruce this up. You would love, as a game developer trying to make a game like that, you would love to be in that position. It sounds very difficult to overhaul a game that is still running every single day, but not impossible. Fortnite did it when they moved to UE5, and that game has I think my issues with Fortnite visually are more from an art style perspective as opposed to a technical perspective. It's like, oh, this technically can look very good, but why are so many of these characters so ugly and dumb looking? Chug jugs and such. And then Overwatch obviously is like the classic, like, hey, we fucking boned this up. We boned this up real bad. You know, for as much as the Payday 2 to Payday 3 thing has a lot of, you know, stink on it, Overwatch 2 it was real. From the outside looking in, as someone who does not play Overwatch anymore and has not played, I think the last time I played Overwatch was like the week that Overwatch 2 came out. So like, maybe I'll reinstall this, and then I played it when like, yeah, this is still, I'm still done with this. Turns out, and now they're gonna potentially roll back the 5v5 change and go back to the player count that Overwatch 1 had, which is like funny. I mean, it says you feel bad for them, but also it just seems like they made bad choices for a game that needed. Overwatch hit a moment there where it felt like, you know, looking at the conversations around it, Overwatch was in need of change, and then Overwatch 2 came out, and the general reaction was like, oh, yes, you made a lot of changes, but you made all the wrong ones. Like, you went left when you should have gone right. All right, and you know, that's player-based reaction type stuff. And certainly not the entirety of the player base. I mean, there are plenty of people that are playing Overwatch 2 right now and probably having a good time with it and still enjoying it, and they don't give a shit about any of this stuff. But yeah, that's a really crazy situation to watch something that you're like, oh, Overwatch is going to be the next massive fucking thing. This is a huge game, and oh, look at all they're spinning up all their weird esports bullshit, and okay, all right, yeah, I guess this is here to stay. And then it all kind of fell apart. And I'm sure their numbers, you know, I'm sure there are plenty of developers out there that would fucking kill to have Overwatch 2's numbers right now, right? But, you know, generally speaking, it just feels like, you know, people are largely unhappy with it and have been for a very long time. So I don't know. You know, sometimes players are wrong. I might actually go as far as to say, when it comes to discussing balance in a multiplayer game, and, you know, some of the balance conversations I've had with people who work on games and do balance work, and seeing the sorts of things that players say, this needs to be this, you need to change this to this, and you got to do this and this, is that it's rarely that simple. And I think that a lot of times players oversimplify what it takes to balance a thing, and get angry over stuff that is just not going their way. I think that's the really hard thing about balance overall, because that happened to me in Titanfall 2, I guess it was, where early on in that game, the default assault rifle was a fucking murder, just real good. And then they made a balance change that made it take like 1 or 2 more bullets to get a kill with it. And suddenly all of the muscle memory around time to kill and all of the other stuff that I had down in that game was wrong and broken. And I just stopped playing it for a while, because I was just like, the game was making me so mad because of that change, that I was, you know, and you know, yeah, sure. Was it overpowered? Probably. I don't know. Like I was never in a position to look at the overall balance of that game, But I will tell you, I was smoking motherfuckers with the loadout I had going, and then suddenly that loadout was not nearly as, or not as viable as it was before. And so I was like, okay, yeah, maybe it was a little too good. I don't know. Anyway. Joe in the UK writes in, says, I've emailed it a few times over the years with a list of games that seem stuck in limbo. Here is the current batch. Will the following games release in 2025? This will be interesting. Okay. All right, we got a list here. Beyond Good and Evil 2. No. Not a chance. Even if that was on a list at some point right now, Ubisoft is going to be embroiled in some shit for a long time. And qualitatively speaking, when you look at some of the talk around delaying games and slowing things down, I think it's no. Beyond Good and Evil 2 does not ship in 2025. And I think there's a high potentiality that it never ships at all. Everwild. Is that the Michelle Ancel other? Is that the other? What the fuck is Everwild the Rare game? What is Everwild? Yeah, that's the Rare game. I could see it. I don't know. Yeah, is Everwild even still in development? And they said back in June that it was not canceled. Oh, that other game was Wild. Okay, yeah. Yeah, Everwild is the Rare game. Yeah. I don't know. Yeah, there's like weird, insiders say. So Phil Spencer played Everwild in October, according to some website about video games. So yeah, does Everwild ship in 2025? I could see it. I don't know. I think that they have been showcasing other games that seem like, because they have not been showing updates on Everwild on a regular basis, I could see that leading to a scenario where, yeah, it's not, like maybe it's not due this year. Or over the next 12 months, I guess, 13 months. I'm going to say maybe not. I'm going to say it's possible. Yeah, the larger question is like, what does 2025 in video games even look like? There's a lot of TBAs, a lot of weird, when you go scroll the list of games that have been announced and confirmed for 2025, it's a weird hopes and dreams kind of list right now. Anyway, let's move on. DokeV. Isn't that, I don't know. DokeV probably is out somewhere by now, right? When is Pearl Abyss going to put DokeV out? Yeah, I don't know. I could see that game coming out next year. I don't know. Elder Scrolls 6, no fucking way. Like, not even, like, that's, no. They will maybe. Oh, right. Crimson Desert has to come out first before DokeV. Yeah, so they've got, yeah. Yeah, Elder Scrolls 6 is not a game in limbo. Like, you're saying this game seems stuck in limbo. Like, the only reason Elder Scrolls 6 got announced is because people need to shut the fuck up. And so when they started talking about Starfield, and people were like, oh, what about Elder Scrolls? They had to be like, yes, fucking, hey, dumbass, yeah, oh, you think we might make another Elder Scrolls game? Yeah, hey, yeah, yep, gonna do it. Working on the space game right now. So, fuck off. Yeah, yeah, I don't know. I feel for them like, well, I guess whatever. Another good problem to have, right, is that your franchise is so popular that people are angry about. Oh, announce another one. What are you doing? But like, Jesus Christ. But no, they're not going to put that out in 2025. They've been working on Starfield for so long that, and the cadence of releases and everything else, like they'll, like, will they even fucking have anything to show on that game in 2025? Will they even have anything meaningful to say about it is probably a bigger conversation to have. I would expect that they probably have a little bit more Starfield stuff to do, right? They probably put out another piece of story stuff on that game. And I'm sure that they have people that are, they've said as much, right? That they have people already working on Elder Scrolls, but that sounds like something that maybe in June or something you see not even a trailer, you get that kind of like Todd Howard conversational, like, yeah, so yeah, I mean, we're excited about the Starfield DLC that's coming out here in a couple of months. And, of course, as that game comes out or as that DLC wraps up, we're, of course, we have more and more of the studio working on Elder Scrolls 6 and then after that Fallout. So shut the fuck up. And Fallout, and hey, also we're working in conjunction with Obsidian on Fallout, or, there's some announcement around, because the thing they want to do is put out more of these games more frequently, right? They don't want to be in this weird bottleneck of like, hey, every fucking 9 years we put out another one of these. And so I think that they will find more ways to engage more studios on some of these games and work on that sort of stuff. And so with Microsoft owning both Obsidian and Bethesda, I think that's the next step for Fallout. So I actually, weirdly enough, I would not be shocked to see a more substantial chunk of Fallout news, because it has the TV show and some of the other stuff giving it a little bit of momentum, that if they had anything to do on that front, if they did successfully outsource it or whatever, that if they are going that route, that they might have something to say about that in 2025. Next game on the list here, GTA 6. Do I think GTA 6 will ship in 2025? Probably. I don't know. Rockstar will delay a game, that's right. What did they narrow? Did they just say, have they given, no, it just says coming 2025. They haven't really given they haven't really narrowed that down, but that's, I think with the amount of time that they have been working on it, and the amount of time they've put into it, I would expect that game would be out later in the year, next year. I know there was some talk about like, oh, we hear it's getting delayed to Q1 26, and like, anything's possible, right? But personally, I think they'll make it. Hollow Knight Silksong. No. That game's Silksong's never going to ship. How long has it been since that game was announced, and how long has it been since it's even been shown? Like, they've got a Steam page up for it with like specs on it, which is funny. Like, they already know what the specs for Silksong are going to be, but they're like, what is that? I'm going to say no, because that's just a funnier answer and a safer one until they show anything about the game ever. The KOTOR remake, sure. If it's going to happen at all, if it's going to happen at all, then it'll happen next year, right? But has that been? I mean, that got so caught up in all of the bullshit around Embracer and everything else that. But I guess there's actually an update on this from September, because IGN interviewed Tim Willits around the release of Space Marine 2, and this IGN, okay. When asked if the release of Space Marine 2 had increased the likelihood of KOTOR becoming a reality, Willits, expecting to be asked about the MIA remake, turned to a prepared statement. Right now, we are focused on development. We look forward to sharing more when the time is right. There you go, brother. Okay. So that's, him from a couple of months ago, at least saying it is still in development. Little Devil Inside. I don't even, what is you? Now you're just making up video games. Oh, right. This, okay. Will this ship in 2025? Yes, sure. Sure, why not? Metroid Prime 4. Will Metroid Prime 4 ship in 2025? That's a good question. I think it has to be. It has to. Well, I think that needs to launch alongside the new Switch and, be a cross-generational thing, or, whatever they end up doing. It seems like that they have settled on the direction for that thing and are working away on it. I know I've seen people at the studio, posting job listings and hiring up, and, like they've been filling spots and working away on the game for a very long time now. I think Metroid Prime 4 has to ship next year. It has to. They just, if only to be just get it off the books, man. But is it a launch game? I don't know. I think, or is it something they save for holiday? I could see them saving it for holiday because it's not. I don't think Metroid Prime 4 is a crucial game that you have to have at launch. It'd be cool to have, if it's ready. But also, what is the nature of it on the new Switch versus the old one? And I think it would be weird. It would be weird for that game to come out and be like, hey, this is the last first party Switch game. And yeah, if the Switch 2 is, assuming the Switch 2 is backwards compatible, because it seems like it should be, if it just runs and doesn't run any better, if it's not like, hey, here's a native version for this Switch, or hey, it runs at a higher resolution here because of whatever tech voodoo we throw at it. I don't know. Sorry, it's not voodoo. It's technically a Voodoo 2. It's got colored lighting. Pragmata, no. Pragmata's not a game. That's never gonna. Pragmata, I guess that was 2023 when they showed that, huh? I could see Pragmata maybe shipping in the back half of 25. That's possible. Vampire the Masquerade Bloodline 2. That's I am not fully like, I am not really that game is not going to come out. I don't know what the situation, like there's something, I know a bunch of fucking weird shit happened around that game, right? And I have not kept current on what all of that stuff is. I'm trying to just like look up like what was the weird bullshit about that game. But I'm not finding anything immediately. Yeah, I mean, on their Steam page it says planned release date 2025, but I don't know. They put out a trailer. They put out a trailer last week. And it says they will release in the first half of 2025. So, I don't know. That's something. That's some kind of movement on it. It had been like a year. Or no, I'm sorry. No, that's not true. They've been doing dev diaries and stuff here and there as well. Hard to say what that game is even going to be by the time it comes out. All that sort of stuff, with all the weird... There's something... Yeah, I don't know. Something weird. So that's the list. That is the list that Joe of the United Kingdom provided us. And I think the safe answer is usually no. Will a game ship? No. Absolutely not. But like we do have some dates for games in January. Like it's not... January currently does not look like an amazing month. Dynasty Warriors Origins on the 17th. Donkey Kong Country Returns HD on the 16th. Spider-Man 2 for PC on the 30th. February's got Civ 7. Phantom Breaker Battlegrounds Ultimate. That Tomb Raider. Avowed is coming out in February. I have found myself thinking more and more about Avowed lately. I played that game a while back now. And that game felt pretty good. February 18th is where it looks like it is finally going to land. And I don't know, man. Like, it doesn't seem like a game that's necessarily going to have the full-on depth of a full-on Elder Scrolls game. But it seems like, hey, Obsidian's been, with the Outer Worlds. Outer Worlds is theirs, right? Oh, man. Like making a smaller, more contained version of that style of game. I think Avowed has the ability to kind of scratch that itch. Like, I don't necessarily think it's going to be something that is as crazy expansive as you want an Elder Scrolls game to be, but also I could go for something that's a little more reined in. And Avowed seemed like it could very much be that game. It was fun when I played it, hitting dudes with a sword with a pistol in my offhand and, fucking shit up. And it just, I don't know. That game seemed like it has potential to be neat, which for all the time it took to get out and everything else, it'd be easy to assume that it is going to shit the bed. But I don't know. I came away from playing it going like, okay, now now I'm interested in this. Like it definitely seems like it has something going for it for sure. We'll see. That's all you can say about it. Yeah, we'll see. 2 Point Museum's out in March. Xenoblade Chronicles X Definitive Edition also out in March. And that's the last... I think that's the last confirmed date for a first-party Switch game. Right? So... I guess at some point the question becomes, does Metroid Prime 4 still even ship on the original Switch? Or do they just go like, fuck it, dude. It's going to be a Switch 2 game. Adamfall is also supposed to come out in March. Speaking of games that are like some other games, sort of. That's kind of Rebellion's... Adamfall is a first-person kind of, nuclear zone kind of, like a little bit of Fallout in there. Adamfall looked cool. I played a little bit of that as well. And it, it was a big stealth sequence that I was getting fucking murdered over and over again. But it seemed like it had a cool vibe to it. I don't know. It left me wanting more. I'll say that about my time with Adamfall. And then we get into Q2, City of the Wolves is out in April. And that's, you know, yeah, there's that it quickly delves into just like, I don't know, things are coming out sometime, like 33 Immortals. Riot's fighting game is listed as, you know, on this page is like, yeah, maybe it'll come out at some point here. Assetto Corsa Evo. Arc Raiders. Arc Raiders seemed kind of cool. Supposedly Borderlands 4 is going to ship next year. It's terrifying. That Capcom Fighting Collection that's going to have the SNK games in it is coming out next year. So that's, if you needed reason to keep playing video games in 2025, there you have it, motherfucker. Capcom versus SNK re-release. Toby Fox said that Deltarune Chapter 3 and 4 would be out in 2025. 3 and 4. So, Doom: The Dark Ages is listed here as a 2025 game, I guess, as a... I thought that trailer looked cool. I don't know. Yeah, will Skate come out anytime next year? Or will it still be sign up for our playtests? For Skate forever. You know, will Fable make it out next year finally? One would hope. FBC Firebreak is supposed to be out next year. That I'm very interested in that. What else, man? Killing Floor 3. That Lunar Remastered collection. Yeah, I don't, you know. It just kind of, yeah, it's a, and I mean this from a big franchise, big publisher sort of thing, right? Like it's like it seems, things seem a little weird right now in terms of just like what's announced for next year. Like it seems a little slight. I guess the potentiality there is there's a high potentiality that the Game Awards could have some very big trailers because there's a lot of room to announce new things for 2025. Or no one has anything and it's going to be a very scary year. I don't know. Towerborn is out in early access, but that is, you know, that's full release. Yeah, Monster Hunter will be out. Yeah, it's a little weird. A little weird. I don't know, not that weird. It's not weird for us to get to November and for the calendar for next year to be like barely full. Do I think Nintendo does their announcement with Keighley or just do their own thing? I do not think there's a... I think they will do their own thing. I should go to Del Taco next year to honor E3's passing. I live pretty close to a Del Taco now. And that's great. But when you eat at a Del Taco on a somewhat regular basis, you know, it's not, you know, you eventually hit a wall with it where you're like, yeah, okay, yeah. It's cool, man. They got burgers and they got tacos. That's fun. Yeah, I think that's my kind of big question for next year is like stuff around Metroid and what ends up happening with that in terms of does it ship on both? Does it ship on Switch but run better on the other one? You know, it's just it's getting mired into this weird console cycle now in a way that you wonder what's going to happen around that stuff. Michael from Chicago writes in and says, why do you think nobody has made a first-person hero class shooter to compete against Overwatch? As a longtime Overwatch player, my enthusiasm for the game has disappeared as the game has gone stale and lost direction with 5v5. The Battle Royale bubble has come and gone, but there's still nobody stepping up to take a piece of the Overwatch pie. I just want Team Fortress 3 or something like that. Yeah, I mean, what, that Gundam game, like Marvel Rivals, is right around the corner. Like, you know, there's, I imagine that some developers probably got scared off by seeing a developer the size of Blizzard like go through this with this game. But even as they're going through it, they still command a decent size of the market. You saw what happened to Conquered. Conquered, in a lot of ways, you know, has parallels to Overwatch, you know, for like 2 weeks or whatever. But that Gundam game came and went. Marvel Rivals will probably Marvel Rivals. Marvel Rivals. I want the double dribble guy to say Marvel Rivals. Marvel Rivals is probably exactly the game you're looking for. It did not move me one bit, but people seem to like it. So I would probably keep an eye out for that one. Or, you know, hey, maybe the Battleborn private servers will get together and you can, you know, you play a truly hobby grade shooter that way. Grant writes in and says, usually by this point, the last generation becomes really cheap, but the 3DS prices have skyrocketed. Why? I thought I'd buy one because, in my opinion, they're the only way to enjoy Metal Gear Solid 3, but they're more expensive than the Switch now. It isn't as if they only sold a few million copies. They should be peanuts by now. Yeah, why is 3DS hardware so expensive? I think because it disappeared from shelves a little bit faster than anyone thought it would. There are no other ways to play 3DS games with 100% compatibility. You know, that nothing like the Switch did not continue the line in a way that the DS games could run on 3DS. Like, there's no next step for those games. And also the 3DS is extremely moddable, and I think that there's a certain desirability to, you know, some of the weird stuff you can do with a 3DS. But I bought my last 3DS as it felt like they were becoming scarce. I bought it's a new 3DS, not an XL, with all the like Mario imprinting on the case. And I bought that when that particular model had become kind of hard to find, but the Target near me had one. And so I like rushed over there and bought it. And then did it real dirty the same day I got it. I'm like, all right, man, let's fucking mung this thing up. But yeah, I don't know. I think it's, you know, all of those things probably contribute to that. But you don't see new 3DS hardware in the wild anymore. It just doesn't feel like Nintendo kept it out there the same way, and retail moved on really quickly as well. So it's not like you could walk into a GameStop and still find a corner where it's like, oh yeah, we still got like, I mean, I'm sure they have used stuff, right? But, you know, it's like, yeah, we still got a handful of new games, and we still got, like, if I go to GameStop.com, STOP, and look for a 3DS, do they even have one? They do. No, it's refurbished. It's refurbished. A new Nintendo 3DS XL in the color of black is $279.99. That's fucked. That's a lot of money. A non-new Nintendo 3DS. This is even more confusing, the terminology. Just a black 3DS, not a new 3DS. Also, it's used, to make that even more confusing. A used 3DS, $199. It's wild. That's a fucking crazy amount of money. And if I want to, can I filter this by like new, by actually new? Do you have any new No, they don't. GameStop has zero stock for actually new 3DSs of any kind. All they have are refurbs and used ones. Yeah, Rain says it'd probably be cheaper to import one from Japan. Yep. Yeah, you could. I mean, if you're already planning to get funky with a 3DS, region swapping a 3DS as a part of that process is not impossible. I have never done it, but from what I read about it, it doesn't sound like it's that hard to do. Or do you even need to? I guess you don't. Anyway. Adam in the United Kingdom writes in and says, I recently watched a video on the hype surrounding Rise of the Robots and the ultimate disappointment upon release. As a journalist, what was your experience with the game? Behind closed doors, did the people know it was going to be a turd? As previews, I remember many publications being quite favorable to the game, with that CGI robot at the time plastered across every gaming magazine. Until release, and then the reviews... and then the reviews when the general public found out what a bag of shit it was. Rise of the Robots always looked like garbage. I remember seeing it pre-release, and it always just played bad. It just never, like, you looked at it and you're like, I don't know, like this weird CG look. I think like it kind of looks shitty actually. And it does not play particularly well. So I don't know. I know, preview coverage of video games at the time was a pretty, neutral to positive game, right? They were always like, look at this thing. Is it any good? We don't know. We'll tell you later. Buy the next issue to find out if it was any good or not. But look at these robots. That's just the nature of game coverage at the time. But that game always looked like a total piece of shit and always ran like a total piece of shit and never played well at all. Anytime I only saw it maybe once or twice pre-release, at a trade show or something like that. But it just looked like it sucked. And having played it, you're like, oh, this thing sucks, dude. Like, this game is terrible. And so I don't know. I don't feel like I was ever fooled by what that game was. They showed it and I was like, this is terrible. And then it came out and it was like, yeah, this is still terrible. There you go. But you did see it hyped up because at the time, that whole nature of like with these CG graphics, this is the next level of video gaming, and like that. There was definitely some momentum behind that, and that's what Nintendo used to try to stave off the Sega enhancements around the 32X and all of that. Is they're like, well, look at Donkey Kong. We made a computer make Donkey Kong instead of us drawing Donkey Kong. And then we took pictures of what the computer put out and scanned those into the video game. And I will tell you, as I have told you before, I think that CG looks fucking terrible. I think it has always looked terrible. Even on Donkey, so like Rise of the Robots being like a subpar version of that. You're like, this sucks, dude. So yeah, I don't know. I think the way that Donkey Kong Country looks is always just looked like a blurry fucking mess. It just looks like ass, dude. It always did. Back then, I mean, now, like, whatever. It just looks like a modern video game, right? Eric from St. Louis writes in and says, as I type this, I'm in the Fortnite Live event, which is them showing us an actual concert in Times Square. And Snoop just said, it ain't nothing but a Fortnite gangsta party. I thought you should know. Eric, you're not the only person to write in with this. Yeah, there is going to be a Snoop Fortnite integration. That it sounds like they're trying to make it deeper than some of the other stuff that Fortnite has done before, because now Fortnite has music in it in a more direct way. But the idea that he said it ain't nothing but a Fortnite gangsta party. I'm sure that's when Tupac wrote that song with Snoop, that's what he had in mind. Like, yeah, no, this is dope, but like, well, what about, we could. I like also the use of the word Fortnite as a stand-in for the word motherfucking. I think that's pretty good on Snoop's part. Let's see here. Taro has a question here. More of a riddle, but we don't have the answer. I have been posing this question to multiple people. What living human, and not a historical figure, has appeared in the most video games? I swear it's Hogan. Madden doesn't count because he's not playable. I feel like there's a more obvious answer here, and I'm just not seeing it. I'm going to say it's like Cal Ripken Jr., or it is going to be a baseball player with a very long career. Because baseball players tend to have very long careers. Maybe, yeah, LeBron, yeah, maybe a basketball player, but it is going to be a sportsman of some kind who has had an extremely long career. Cal Ripken Jr. was the first person that came to mind for me, because of his longevity in the game and all that sort of stuff. But I bet that there's a better answer. But it's going to be someone who was in an annualized sports game and had a very long career. That is almost, I could almost guarantee that that's going to be your answer. Is, someone who had a 20-year baseball career and, was in at least one video game, if not 2 or 3, every single year for 20 years. So, yeah. That practically has to be the answer. People in chat are crazy. They're saying like Tony Hawk. Like, dude, there's been like 12 Tony Hawk games. Like, there are players who played in the 80s that probably made it 20 years or more. I mean, there's been baseball games with players in them for a very long time. That would be my guess. Oh, yeah. Pat says The Undertaker has been playable in 51 games. Maybe that's... Yeah, I guess once they ramped up production of wrestling games, there's and had multiple wrestling games a year there for a while. When they weren't just putting out one game across multiple platforms, that potentially gets you there. Adam from the 805, a truly nefarious part of the world. What are the chances we ever see a full-blown home gaming console manufacturer? A new full-blown home gaming console manufacturer. Which company would be most likely to enter that market? I don't think there's no... I don't see anyone entering the hardware market anymore. I don't, there's people out there with boxes and devices that, could you see them pivoting into games a little more directly? Sure, Apple is like a controller away and a marketing push away from making the Apple TV a bigger deal in gaming than it is now. Just to say, it's not much of one. Amazon got close a couple of times. They were definitely pitching people on it for a while there. But I feel like if you were going to enter the market right now, you would have some kind of fucking streaming box bullshit. You would be promoting something like that. It'd be like Samsung, it'd be built into a TV. It'd be, like those sorts of scenarios, But in terms of like, hey, here's a dedicated machine that runs games that were made for this machine, meaning not a Steam Deck, because a Steam Deck is just running the games you bought for not just a fancier PC. Like, hey, here's another closed ass ecosystem for your ass. No, I don't see. I just don't see the value that anyone else would bring to that. And I don't, how many companies would be willing to invest the R&D in actually making it a reality and building the biz dev and relationships with publishers and getting the support and like just going through all those hoops in a market where the console space feels a little weird anyway. Where that market just seems strange as it is. It's hard to envision someone jumping into it right now with a traditional console, right? If it was a streaming thing, if it was just a fancy PC, like I don't think that counts for what we're talking about here. So yeah, I don't know. I don't really see anyone in a position to get into it. That's obviously why they would, in a different environment. You could have seen a scenario where like AMD, what if they just made their own machine instead of licensing their stuff to Sony and, going that route? What if NVIDIA said, hey, we want to make a machine? They wouldn't, because NVIDIA makes all its money on AI now. But, after that bubble pops and NVIDIA is scrambling, would they ever be in a position to say, I mean, especially if they bought ARM, which they didn't, but, because then they would have like, okay, we got these ARM CPUs, we've got this NVIDIA GPUs, and here you go. Yeah, if the situation was different, would NVIDIA do that? Would NVIDIA do that in this market? No. Would AMD do this in this market? No, almost certainly not. But yeah, let's say, what if Microsoft got out? Right? What if Microsoft dropped out of hardware completely and went like, hey, you can play our games on PC and we got a streaming puck and you can plug it in and play Halo on it, whatever, man. I don't think that would lead to someone else jumping in and competing. I think it would open up a scenario where someone might try to do more set-top box PC type stuff. Maybe that opens the door for Valve to say like, okay, well, we're going to launch a PlayStation competitor and it's going to just hook up to Steam, and I don't know, man. And maybe they go with it, but ultimately we're just talking about like a fancier PC or a more bespoke consoleized PC type thing, running stuff that they already make and do. But the idea of like someone new, like, like who's Samsung, like who's gonna, Samsung has been pushing their TV stuff as like, hey, you can play Xbox Game Pass games on your Samsung TV. That's been their gaming pitch for a while now. And so I just don't know who the big players, like any of the big players in the space, do they see enough upside in the console business to try to actually make a thing? It's really hard to see a traditional consumer electronics company being like, yes, this is the moneymaker we've been waiting for. There's an opening finally. We're going to step right through. And then we're going to be the biggest company in the world, baby. It's like, no, Microsoft would, in this fantasy scenario, Microsoft would have bowed out for a reason. And you would look at that and go, okay, if a company with the resources of Microsoft can't make this work with hardware that is highly competitive with its nearest competitor, if they can't find a way to make this work, what chance do we have in this space? And sure, you might see mistakes that Microsoft has made over the years and go like, well, we wouldn't fucking fuck up like that. And maybe that would bolster your confidence a little bit, but I don't see the upside on it, dude. I think anything we see that's going to feel new is going to be more of the continued outcropping of the like new form factor PC, like a Steam Deck, like the other kind of Steam Deck competitors that are out there. I think we eventually see someone take that market and go, yeah, but what if this was just a box you hooked up to your TV, which obviously you could just do right now. You could build it right now. There's nothing stopping you from building that. But something that they try to market to consumers is like, hey, here's a Steam box. Like the time is almost right for an actual Steam box to make sense. As crazy as that sounds, right? As a Steam machine, you know? Like we're just about there to where that actually maybe starts to make a little bit of sense. Because of the way PC games have progressed, because of Valve's continued investment in Linux and Proton, and a lot of the work they've done on big picture mode, like they've cleaned up enough of their ecosystem in ways that make that a reality. And you could build that right now if you wanted to. But I mean something you could walk into a store and buy and be like, here's the ROG Ally, and then here's the ROG Ally Pro. It's a black box that you plug into your goddamn television and it hooks up to Steam or whatever else, you know, and it runs Windows. I think if you could do that at the right price point and the right power curve and, you know, whatever else, you could maybe do something around that and get some traction. But ultimately, anyone doing that is not going to build their own storefront, because then they're building yet another PC storefront, and that market is so fucking crazy already that if you're saying, hey, we're going to build a fancy PC, but just install Steam and buy games, then you're not getting the benefit that building a console gets those console makers of like, hey, we also get 30% of every game that fucking sells. It's rad. You know? And so if you're ROG, if you're Asus coming into the space and saying, check out this box, like, yeah, you can sell it and you'll have to charge more for it because you don't make any money on the back end. Unless Steam is willing to pay you to, you know, pre-install Steam on their box. But what are you going to do? Not put Steam on? You're going to buy games out of the fucking Asus Armory crate? That shit show? No. Are you going to make it a Game Pass box? Maybe. You know, sure, why not? You could. You going to partner with Epic to make an Epic machine when they've done none of the UI work on their store to make any of that? Like they're, you know, that's not, that doesn't seem like an amazing immediate option. You could get there, but yeah, I don't know. It's just it's hard to see who would be that company that would do that, unless, you know, it's like, do you end up, does some random Chinese company say, hey, we're gonna try to put boxes under your TV, and then the American government goes, wait, I'm sorry, you're gonna do what? You know, when Huawei comes along and says, we've got a console, and the government says, you can't import any of those here. What? No. You know, that would be a whole situation there as well. Glenn writes in and says, what do you think about Gorf? I think Gorf is sick. I think Gorf is a fucking rad game. He goes on to say, I recall the main draw being the cool joystick in the arcade cabinet. The VIC-20 version was pretty good. I think the cool thing about Gorf is that it talked. You know, Gorf, you know, the game would taunt you as you played. And also it had like Galaxian in it, which is weird because then some of the home versions didn't have the license to use Galaxian the way that they thought they did when they made Gorf in arcades. And so some of the home versions are weird. Yeah, Gorf was like, it was like the first minigame collection. It was like 4 different stages that were like dramatically different from one another. And yeah, Gorf is rad. There was a sequel to Gorf. There was a Ms. Gorf in development that never saw the light of day, unfortunately. Joe from New York writes in and says, and asks, can a reviewer be too big of a fan? When it comes to assigning someone to review a game, I assume you probably don't want to assign it to someone who has zero interest in playing it, but is it possible to assign someone who has too much interest? Like if a person is such a big fan of a particular franchise, could their review be overly critical or lenient and lead to a score that is lower or higher than it should have been had it not been reviewed by someone so invested in the series? Also, is that even such a bad thing? So, you know, in these enlightened times, we're kind of beyond this, right? Ideally, when you're talking about reviews of games, you are learning a little bit about the person who was reviewing it, which, you know, for a long time was not the move. But now I think it's pretty vital with the way that, you know, as video games has developed and as coverage of games has developed, it becomes part of the process. So I can talk to you about the old GameSpot process when we were assigning games. The idea is that you would assign the game to someone who was a prospective consumer for that game. That they might buy that game. They might believably go like, oh, I might want to play this. I might want to buy this. And so, you know, so the answer is yes, that any of this stuff is going to skew the review one way or the other these days. And, you know, what you want to find is someone that you trust. Or someone that you can discern their tastes across the board. And so you trust them a different way. Like I've always said, it doesn't matter if you agree with me about the games I like and don't like. Ideally, the scenario is I've spent enough time talking about games that you've figured out that you might still like a game that I don't like. And I can talk about that game the way I talk about games, and you can still like glean something from that that might be useful to you one way or the other. And so that ends up being the way that a lot of this stuff is intended these days. But, you know, when you're speaking to a more mainstream audience, the more mainstream audience that GameSpot was speaking to, you know, 20 years ago, you can't make those assumptions. They don't know who the fuck I am. They shouldn't have to know who the fuck I am. And so you're looking for these reviews that are a little more middle of the road, a little more like, you know, voice of the author kind of removed. Like, here's this thing. Is it good or not? And so, yeah, you wouldn't want someone who was just going to go, who wasn't going to explain away all the problems a game might have and be able to own up and say, yeah, no, this game has issues, man. And explain those issues and not hand wave them away and be like, yeah, it's got these problems, but you know, like, no, those might be deal breakers for some people. Like, you kind of have to try to factor that stuff in. And so, yeah, I don't know. Sometimes that stuff can be kind of hard. You know, we had, I believe there were cases where Assassin's Creed games got reviewed by someone with an Assassin's Creed tattoo. You know, and you have to kind of like, oh, well, shit, man. Is that over the line? Is that weird? That seems, you got to do the calculus on it and figure it out and decide if you feel comfortable with that person reviewing that game or not. And go forward, you know? So yes, I think the answer is, you know, the question you're actually asking is, does the person you assign the review to change the review? Yeah, it does. Totally. Oh, it always did. And, you know, we tried to iron that out through part of the editorial process of having multiple people look at the reviews and having multiple people say like, hey, you know, your argument here you're making about this game doesn't match up with this score here. The thing you're saying about this game sounds actually like it's more of a, you know, fair instead of good, or, you know, like the argument you're making here doesn't really. So, you know, and then you kind of send that back to the author and go like, figure out what you want to say. It isn't, and we're going to lower the score. It was, you should either raise the score or make the text like less harsh or more harsh, you know, whatever. Like there's something incongruous about the score and the text, and you should figure it out. It didn't always work that way. Sometimes with freelancers, especially if they weren't available for that kind of feedback, you might just make the changes and go with it. And, you know, sometimes that's just how that would go. But ideally you were, you know, working with the author to make sure that the text said what they meant to say about the game and that the score reflected the text appropriately. And through that process, you could kind of start to iron out a little bit of, you know, if someone is just like predisposed to liking a certain game or whatever. but yeah, I don't know. Like it's ultimately, I think that that's a way of reviewing games that made sense then. And as I've said, over the years, especially as this field has really thinned out, there's just no need for that type of like clean room, weird, detached approach to coverage anymore. Like we can afford to be people now. And that's a much more, I think that ends up also being just a much more effective way of doing it. It doesn't necessarily work in a mainstream sense because, you know, you're someone who just like, if you were to search for a review of a game and get something that I was saying about a game and you didn't know me at all, that might not be as useful as maybe it would have been some of the stuff I was doing 20 years ago. That's fine. I'm not trying to speak to that audience anymore. It's because that audience doesn't exist for game coverage the same way it used to either. So you're trying to talk to people who don't exist anymore. But yeah, that's kind of the long and the short of that, I guess. Doug writes in and says, do you think that a quick look style of video game coverage is possible in the current space of video game journalism? I always found it very valuable to see these vertical slices that are less formal than a full review, but not just someone going blind into the opening 30 minutes of a new game. But now there are so many games coming out, or maybe not enough if we're looking at the bigger ones. It feels like it would be impossible to try to manage this at a somewhat mainstream publication anymore. Yeah, I mean, the thing about playing games is that it takes time to play games. It's the big thing that makes it different from movie reviews and music reviews. You know, a movie is at most going to be like, what, 3 hours long? Dragon Age is like, what, 50? I got Dragon Age 15 hours before the game went live. And the note that came with it said, like, we'd like to invite you to review the game. And I'm like, yeah, I mean, even if I started playing now and didn't touch it, like by the time I got a review out, you know, there'd be so many other reviews out there that it's like, it would be pointless to break your neck trying to do that. I think that like that style of coverage works for a variety of reasons. You know, some of that is personality driven. And I think that different games, so, you know, you would see situations where like you'd go into a video and you would literally be playing the first 30 minutes or first hour of a game. And there'd be some situations where like the person guiding the video had already finished the game and was going back and showing something off. All that was dictated by when did the game come in and when was the embargo and how much time was there to produce a thing, and you know, was there time to play a game before going in and playing it? And I think that all of those things are valid. I think that looking at the first hour of a game is still a valid look at a game. But yeah, you kind of end up in a situation where, you know, like, yeah, if you want to have like an hour-long video of a game that has a bunch of time put in ahead of time to know a lot of what there is to know about the game, that takes it from like, hey, it took us an hour to produce this piece of content to, hey, it took us 11 hours to produce this piece of content. And then you look at the number of games coming out on a regular basis, and then what do you do? You know? And so, you know, are you, you know, what are you focusing on in that time? And, you know, would it be better, you know, would that time be better served for you to have made 3 videos instead of 1? The corporate grind nature of a lot of that stuff ends up like impacting the quality of that stuff, but also the pace at which games move. And week to week, like what are people interested in? I find it, and so this is something I've been thinking about in terms of like YouTube numbers, which is, you know, not something I have like a major focus on here, because this is, you know, this is a Patreon backed situation. You know, you go to patreon.com/Jeff Kirstman and you get an ad-free version of this show and you get some bonus content and all that stuff. But I look at the YouTube numbers. I'm curious. And, you know, you can go look for yourself, like the numbers that so I stream on Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. Today, you know, Tuesdays is the podcast. Friday is ranking 8-bit Nintendo games. Those videos do fine. They do what they do. And then Wednesday is kind of more amorphous. And so Wednesday is more like, hey, here is me taking a quick look at a video game for half an hour, 40 minutes, whatever. And I'll do a few of those and then call it. And the interest is not there. And even sometimes that's even with big games before they're out or right around the time they're released, which is classically when people would be searching for such a video. And you could say like, oh, well, that's because everyone else is making videos about those games at that time. Like I did a Call of Duty video the day before that was out, or when it was out in New Zealand, or, you know, kind of in that 24-hour period of limbo there. And that video did shit for numbers, even though it is like one of the biggest games of the year, right? And it was timed relatively correctly in terms of, you know, when it went up and all that sort of stuff. But, you know, you could argue like, oh, there's going to be much bigger outlets covering the game the same way. And so all the traffic's going to go to that. But also I think there are a lot of indie games that people just don't know they want until they want them. And so those videos, we talked about this last week, and people wrote in and said like, hey, actually it was really useful that you did this. And so like, I'm kind of keeping that style of coverage alive to a certain extent, I guess, but like not in the same way. Yeah, you know, we would pick and choose. And I think you do kind of have to pick and choose with all that sort of stuff. But generally, you know, hey, sometimes there are indie games that I want people to know about that like no one is talking about, or very few people are talking about, or whatever. And, you know, I'll make something, I'll do something with that. And that's fine. Like I'm not reliant on, you know, the YouTube numbers to feed the family or whatever. But it is something like, it's like, is there something I could be doing better to, get these games in front of more people? Ultimately, that's the like, hey, I want more people to know about, I don't know, what, web fishing, Utopia Must Fall, whatever, you know, whatever it is. You know, the people aren't necessarily looking for that sort of stuff. And, you know, people that are looking for me find it and seem to appreciate it. And so it's like, I'm not like sitting there going like, these numbers got to get up or blah, blah, blah. You know, it's nothing weird like that. It's just something I keep track of because, you know, that's what you do when you're running a business. You look at the numbers and go, what the fuck's going on? And so, yeah, I don't know. I think about that sort of stuff. And I think that a lot of it is because, yeah, there are a billion people making a billion videos out there all the time now. And so it's a very saturated market. Yeah, I don't know. There's, especially when you look at the situation with YouTube, there is sort of a, you know, this channel has been here longer and building this base more actively. And so they're going to benefit from, you know, those kind of effects, and the numbers grow that way and whatever. I don't know. The numbers have all been growing. So it's like, you know, on YouTube. So I just look at it and go like, cool. I don't know. Like the real situation with a business like this is like, how do you get more people to know about it? That's always the situation with this sort of stuff, like a subscription based, like, hey, you know, hey, sign up for this Patreon, get on this Discord and hang out. We're watching wrestling or complaining about Little Caesars skins or whatever. And going that way with it. And, you know, the Twitch stuff is cool, and I like streaming on Twitch, and the YouTube stuff is cool, and you know, it all kind of contributes or whatever, but like, you know, there's no clear path anymore. Like people always talk about breaking into streaming or whatever it is. And I just wonder if that's even possible anymore. Like, you know, I've been doing this for 30 years. And And so obviously there are built-in benefits from me having been around doing this for 30 years that I'm able to do this now. But if 2 years ago, if I was just some dude in his mid-40s that said, hey, do you want to see me play some video games? And the answer would be like, fucking no. Like, there are a million people out there doing this all the time that no one is, like, why would you, what do you add to it? What do you bring to it? And so I think that's the kind of weird thing. I was at Target the other day, and in their section kind of near the video games and all of that, they're selling like mic arms, like Rode brand microphone arms to bolt to your desk and have a microphone on. And there's some microphones there and some really low rent capture cards, like capture gear there. And then some company, the same company that made the really crummy looking capture box, also had like complete streamer kit. It was like, I don't know, a microphone and a webcam and a capture box, I guess. And it's interesting to see like that promoted as like a, hey man, get into this. And I don't think you need to do it professionally, right? I think plenty of people just do it because they just like doing it. And I get it. I fucking love doing this. It's great that I get to do this, and also like this helps me earn a living. It's mind-boggling that I've been allowed to get away with this for as many decades as I have, but here we are. But like, yeah, the idea that they're trying to sell this stuff to people, and it's always an interesting conversation, like meeting other adults. And now that I have kids and stuff, you end up at kids' birthday parties, and it's like, what do you do? And you're like, well, I mean, I don't know, man. What do you even call this anymore? What do you even call this anymore? And I love doing it. I still consider it the same. I was having a conversation with someone at a publisher just a couple of days ago. And we were talking about, because it was when I went out on my own, like this now starts to look like more of a content creator business or whatever. But a lot of people on that side of things deal with publishers in a very different way. Like if I were truly an influencer in the like line of work sense, I wouldn't talk to public relations people. I would talk to marketing people. I would be doing sponsored streams for games. I would be doing, it would be way different than what this is. Like I try to run this with the same types of guardrails that I, was raised on. In terms of like, hey, we're reviewing games. Hey, we're trying to keep this stuff separate. We're trying to, and so the question was like, hey, do other publishers see me more as an influencer or as a journalist? And the answer is like, I still talk to all of the same people I talked to before, with like very few exceptions. And even in those cases, it's still more of a, if anything, I think I get like additional opportunities because having a public facing YouTube channel means occasionally I get emails. And they're the weirdest emails, man. They just seem crazy because they'll be like, hey, we'd like to offer you a code for this game. Reminder, this is not a paid opportunity. We don't have any paid opportunities at this time. As if like, I guess like people just go like, oh, well, they're not going to pay me to play it. Then don't even send me the code. Like I don't like it. It's so not how I'm wired. But I'm just like, yeah, no, cool. Send me this game. I would love to check it out, and maybe I'll make a video with it. Maybe I won't. And that's fine. But it's weird to start getting those sorts of emails. I get, let me open the. I have been getting emails And sometimes you get emails from like people that want like it's like an MCN. It's like hey, we want to manage your YouTube channel and you'll grow this. We'll grow. We got the growth mindset over whatever it is. Just message emails in all caps where the subject line is partnership business proposal. And they're like, we can get you access to a sound library. And I'm like, I can fucking pay for my own sound library. Like, what are you fucking pushing? What bullshit are you shoving my way? It's a lot of weird stuff like that. Let me see if I can find another example. Media partner opportunity. Like they're basically saying like, hey, you could write articles about this event and then you would be an official partner of this event. And I'm like, I don't think I'm going to do that. I'm reaching out to you because I have a new gaming chair that I think your audience would appreciate. It would really help our company. Like, I don't know. It's just yeah. Lately, I've started getting a lot of emails about like, if you pay our company, we'll get you booked on big podcasts. And I'm like, well, like I should get out there more. I should be guesting on more things. But this is not the way to do it. So yeah, I don't know. So it's just a lot of really weird, sketchy sounding opportunities come my way now, and they are all super sketchy. I will say that a lot of the offers of the like Raid Shadow Legends variety, like the numbers they have been offering on that have been going up for whatever reason. I don't know. I take that as a sign that I'm more desirable. I don't know. But those things are like the ultimate, where they'll say something like, well, you're going to be guaranteed $400, but you could make $150,000. You're like, okay, what? And then it's like, if you can convince your audience, if you stream this game sponsored for multiple hours, and play a game that you're known for first, and then play it so that people are there to watch and they stay. Like they figured out that like people bail as soon as a sponsored stream starts. So they're like trying to like okay, here's. But like it's basically like, hey, if I convince you to download this mobile game and also play it for like hours to level up high enough to some certain point where they're convinced that you'll probably monetize if you keep playing it, then they will pay me X number of dollars. And so it's like, if you can get 2,000 people or, whatever it is, I don't know. And so the idea of like, hey, I'm going to convince you guys to go play some dog shit. Like, unless we all just agreed like, hey, let's just do this and we'll scam them, baby. Then, like, no, man. It just has like the vibe of a pyramid scheme, I'm trying to scroll through and see if I can find any other ones. Hi, The Jeff Gerstmann Show. We're looking for engaging creators like yourself and would love to sponsor some of your upcoming videos on your channel for $500 USD if you'd be open to it. We work with 300 plus brands globally. And then he's listing off like 4 brands that I've never heard of. And would love to know if you're interested in this opportunity. And so I think the amount of work that they're getting people to do for the amount of labor that they're getting out of different, people that are streaming and whatever it is, the amount of effort you would have to put into that for, $500 or, whatever it is is really crazy. Like, it's really undervaluing it's really undervaluing all of that content. Like, I think a lot of people are selling themselves short, and I can't blame people for taking it, because like ultimately, like, that those are the only offers that are around, right? So it's not like someone else is offering way more for this type of work or whatever. Like, you know, it all got established. There was a big, man, where I should try to find it. But someone had written up like it was on Polygon. It was a column on Polygon, talking about like you know, paying streamers and what that used to look like back in the days of like Ninja getting a bunch of money before he left for Mixer and whatever else, and what those sponsored streams used to look like, and like the Apex Legends launch where they kind of surprise launched it and worked with, you know, worked with streamers for that, and kind of walking through how that all worked and how it's kind of all not necessarily gone up in smoke, but it's a lot more like you can't just like dump money on a streamer and be like, play this game and we'll have a good launch. Because the sponsored stream stuff, like, everyone has gotten wise to it, and everyone just assumes that the person playing the game on the sponsored stream hates it, because they normally play this other game all the time, and now they're playing this other thing and kind of like weakly smiling their way through it and going like, yeah, no, this is neat. And then they never ever play it ever again. Like, it just feels like that specific style of stream has run its course. And that money's not quite there anymore. And I think there are different ways to do sponsored streams. Like, you know, like I would do sponsored streams for non-gaming things. I think there are a lot of ways to do like brand integrations or whatever into a live stream that don't involve like fucking things up, right? And I think there are plenty of ways to do that. I think when you do it with games, you know, the expectation is that you're going to play the game. And as someone who spends a lot of time playing games and talking about them fairly directly, putting me in a position where I'm like, well, I don't know, seems okay. Like, you know, no one's going to fucking fall for that. No one's going to go buy the game. Like, it doesn't work for anybody. It doesn't work for the advertiser. It doesn't work for the audience. It doesn't work for me. But, you know, if an energy drink company came along and wanted, you know, I like podcast ads, you know, like here we are on the podcast. Like, I like the way podcast ads work. I like the, you know, and as I said, I think last week when we were talking about it on Wednesday, I like the way radio works. I like I like that style, and something about the Host Red podcast ad I've really come to like, and come to just appreciate that as like a fun thing, and that works out for me, you know, business wise as well. You know, I think that makes a lot of sense. And those ads are, you know, 2 minutes, 3 minutes, 4 minutes, and you can, you know, go over to Patreon and, you know, upgrade today and get this podcast with no ads if you want that, if you need that. We got it, baby. And I think that's a nice, that's like a sensible transaction, you know? But yeah, I don't know. It's a very weird market out there, and you know, I don't begrudge anyone that is taking some of those deals and some of those offers and stuff like that, because, you know, it's a weird, the world's weird, and, you know, everyone's got to eat, right? So, but yeah, I don't know. Just sometimes it just seems like that stuff doesn't work the way that everyone thinks it does. And it just seems like, you know, people move from ad format to ad format because they go like, oh, this thing is new and exciting. And every sponsor loves new and exciting. They want the new exciting integration that, you know, that is awesome and, you know, whatever. And then when that gets old or is proven to not work as well as everyone claimed it did, then everyone's got to find something else. And so, you know, but I think podcast ads have been proven, you know, like they fucking work. And they're not abrasive the way that a lot of other ad formats are. And I think just a lot of that stuff just makes a lot of sense. So And again, I like doing it just from the like, you know, radio man perspective. I just like doing it. I don't know. Anyway, let's see. This is maybe a weird question. John from Orlando just sent this in a little while ago. As I recall, you've been in your line of work since the early days of the internet and before social media. Do you remember the first time someone told you they were a fan of your work? Or more generally, was there a moment that you realized this was more than a normal job and you were now something of a public figure? Did any of that change the way you act or think about yourself or your work? I was standing on a street corner in San Francisco waiting for a friend of mine that was supposed to be taking a bus up from the South Bay. Or from, I forget where the bus was coming from. But like we were having trouble, like his cell phone died and I wasn't sure how I was going to fucking find him. But I drove to San Francisco to pick him up and give him a ride. He was like desperate to find somebody to pick him up. And he was in, you know, he had to get someplace. And I had to get out of my car because I wasn't sure where I was going to meet him. So I parked and I was standing on 6th Street in San Francisco, which is not like a great neighborhood. And so I'm just like kicking it on 6th Street, you know, doing whatever, looking for this dude. And a car rounds the corner and dude looks out the window and goes, "Hey, you're that guy." And like, and recognized me as he was driving by. I was like, that's one of the crazier ones. Just because it's like someone literally driving by and getting like a brief look at you and going, "You're that fucking dude." You know, we started going to PAX. Back at GameSpot, PAX was viewed as something that was not, and I think they've changed this since then. But PAX was not viewed as like a show that we cared about because it was all games. It was a public show, and so we already had preview builds. We already had access to that stuff. There was no benefit in us going to PAX. Was the mandate, I guess. So we just didn't go to PAX. And then when I wasn't there anymore, we immediately started going to PAX, and it's a weird thing to. I think I might have gone to PAX once at GameSpot near the very end because someone invited me to do a panel, I think is what it was. And so I went to like the first PAX East. When I was still at GameSpot. That might be how that went. But it was a very interesting thing to go from like, you know, you sit in an office all day and you get emails and you get whatever and, you know, like you get all the death threats but, you know, very few people would write in to be like, "Hey, I appreciate what you're," you know, that stuff was very few and far between. And so it was weird to go out into public and, you know, especially something like PAX, which is, you know, like, an audience specifically for that sort of stuff. But as we started podcasting and doing more video and you know, doing more video shows and live broadcasts and stuff, like we kind of became personalities, whether people liked it or not. And there were people that were very resistant to that as it changed. And people that really wanted to stop us from doing it. Which was, you know, I mean, a very backwards. I mean, you look at where things have gone, and you go like, that's even more wrong than it seemed then. But yeah, I don't know. It was weird to go from like, you know, you never hear anything positive about what you're doing. It's just like nonstop death threats and people saying that you're biased, like all the other bullshit that comes with this line of work. And then you get out there in public and people are like, "Oh my God, can you sign this for me? Can you do this?" And it was like, "Oh, sure. Yeah. Okay." And you know, you'd get recognized here and there prior to that, but you know, it really, around 2008, a lot of things changed, in terms of my public awareness of who I was. I think it changed in a very dramatic way, around then. And so around 2008, I started getting recognized a lot more. And I don't know, it is what it is. People have always been very nice. No one has come up and been like fucking weird. No one has come up and been like, you know, straight up garbage, or, you know, like about stuff. Like Like people have been very nice. It's been very nice to get out and interact with people. And yeah, so I don't know, that's kind of like something that's kind of how it happened or how it changed, I guess. But you know, like podcasting, I mean, that's what podcasting is, like podcasting, and it's part of why I love podcasting so much. Is there is that kind of like you feel this like more of a connection than, you know, just writing or reading articles, writing articles, like all that sort of stuff. And that's part of why I like doing it live, is because it's just that more direct, you know, no editing. Like, here we are. People edit their podcasts. I'm like, well, why? I know why. I know why. Sometimes I think about it. Sometimes I think, man, I wonder if you cleaned it up a little bit, and I mean that from an ums and ahs perspective, would that be an improvement on the overall product? Yeah, probably. But I don't know. I like it just natural, baby. If I was going to do anything to a podcast, it would be to like break it out into multiple things. It'd be like, if I was going to do it, well, I mean, I already know what the next podcast is that I'm going to start here. I just got to get around to starting it. I have been so locked up and jammed up in terms of like coming up with a name for this interview show, coming up with a visual motif. I think I have the idea down for what I think the visual motif should be. And I just need to get a hold of somebody and be like, hey, you design good. Let me give you dollars to design good for me. And then do merchandise and whatever else and all of that. That it's embarrassing to a certain degree that, you know, that there is no coffee cup or t-shirt for this fucking monstrosity yet. But yeah, I don't know. It's yeah, it just is something that kind of just has to happen, and but doesn't have to happen on a timetable. And so there you go. But yeah, I don't know. That's kind of where things are at, and it's been very interesting, you know, continuing to do this, and as things have changed, and as I have done my best to not change, you know, or rather, then you got to recognize that, like, hey, there are things that can and should change, and figuring out what those are and what the core values are. Like, that's just, you know, we're getting back to just like basic ass content strategy stuff that every magazine has had to do for decades. Like, there is that thing of like, what the fuck is this thing? And I've always been in a position over the last 15 years or so that I know what the fuck this thing is, whatever it is I'm doing. But describing that to someone and packaging it up in a way that makes it sound attractive and sellable, which was a pressure point, you know, some number of years ago. That was always the hard part, you know? And yeah, I don't know. It just eventually it just boils down to, what do you stand for? What do you really care about? And what are the things you won't do? Where are the lines? And why are the, you know, and why do those lines exist? And all of that sort of stuff, you know, is sort of the big questions that then, you know, you can use that kind of book or whatever to inform, like, well, here's what this thing should be called, and here's why it exists, and, you know, here's what we're going to do here. You know, like, a lot of it just kind of like, once you get the basics down, a lot of the rest of it will kind of flow out of you. Or I don't know, that kind of flows out of me anyway. I don't know. That seems like it seems like a no-brainer. Maybe that is actual game. I don't know anymore. You know, it's just basic ass content strategy. It should be Pretty simple stuff, but pretty simple brand exercises or whatever. But yeah, it's an interesting space, and yeah, like it being working solo and getting these weird emails now about these sponsorship deals and all this other stuff, and just seeing what that looks like has been really, it's been cool to see it. I think some of it's kind of gross. And again, I can't begrudge anybody for taking those sorts of opportunities, but I look at it and go like, I think that a lot of this is exploitative. And I think that generally speaking, people that are out there doing streaming and or just any kind of content creation, to generalize, I think a lot of them are getting sold short these days. And I think it's a really rough, it's a rough market all around. I mean, obviously there were more layoffs in the game journalism space last week. And I don't think that's going to reverse course anytime soon. I think if anything, there's going to just be more of that in everyone's future. Because media is, whatever. And video game media is especially exploitative, I think, because you have a lot of people that are fans that just want to get into this line of work for any reason. And so you've seen people that, are getting paid $5 for a news post or whatever. And maybe they get a free game in the mail and they go, ooh, And so this line of work has always been exploitative to a certain degree. And I think that there have been some people over the years that have been like, they like games, but not enough to let it own them, not enough to let it like shape them, and be like, no, I still have some integrity to this. And, like, send me a free game or don't send me a free game. Like, I don't give a shit. I'm here to do this job. And I don't know. I think that's the stuff that I like, I guess. But whatever. I've rambled on long enough. That's going to do it for the show. I'll be back next Tuesday. Well, okay. So, program note. Next Tuesday, there might not be a show because I might not have electricity. I'm not sure. There's some kind of maintenance happening in the area. And they chose a Tuesday. So if that's the case, then maybe the show will happen Wednesday, or maybe it will happen Tuesday, and then maybe the power goes out in the middle of the show. I don't know. We'll figure something out. So yes, that's consider that. Get out there and vote. If you're in line, stay in line, all that good shit. Let's make this happen. All right. Have a good rest of your week. I'll be back tomorrow. We'll do some stuff with video games. And Friday for 8-bit Nintendo games. See you then.